Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marianne Bachmeier. Marianne Bachmeier was born on June 3, 1950, in a small town called Zar-Chotot, located in Lower Saxony, West Germany. Her parents moved there shortly after the end of World War II, as her father, a former SS officer and member of the German National Socialist Party, had suffered repression. She grew up in a conservative, religious family, and her childhood was not a happy one. Her father was controlling, abusive, and an alcoholic, spending more time at a nearby bar than with his family. Her mother often shunned her and rarely spoke to her, showing little interest in her life. As her father's alcoholism worsened, he became increasingly aggressive towards the family. This led her mother to decide to divorce him. Marianne was not upset by this. She felt it would allow her to be free and happy. However, her mother soon remarried a man who was just as cruel as her biological father. This resulted in conflicts between she and her stepfather, whom she referred to as a dictator. Unfortunately, instead of supporting her daughter, her mother sided with her husband. During one of their arguments, she was thrown out of the house and left on the street. She faced various abuses from men, and as a result of one incident, she became pregnant. In 1966, at the age of 16, Marianne gave birth to her first child. Due to not having stable housing and lack of a steady income, she made the difficult decision to put the child up for adoption. 2 years later, she became pregnant again by her boyfriend. Despite being in an unhealthy relationship, but she chose to keep the baby. However, shortly after the birth, she experienced physical aggression from a stranger, which led to significant psychological issues. Her boyfriend then left her, leaving her alone with the baby and without financial support. As a result, she had to place the child with a foster family. Eventually, Marianne dropped out of school and started searching for a job to support herself. During this time, she met Christian Hold, the manager of a bar where she worked. They started dating, and a few months later, she became pregnant with her third child. This time, she felt ready to raise the baby because she had a stable income. However, Christian disagreed with her decision, leading to the end of their relationship. Despite the breakup, but she remained determined to have the baby. On November 14, 1972, she gave birth to a girl named Anna. Her mother pressured her to give Anna up for adoption, as she had done with her previous children, but she refused. She couldn't bear the thought of abandoning Anna and promised herself that she would be a good mother to Anna. Marianne underwent a surgery that completely eliminated her ability to have more children. She later acknowledged that this was a common procedure at the time. After the surgery, she and her young daughter, Anna, moved to the town of Lübeck. Despite facing various challenges, she found happiness, largely because Anna was the only person in her life who truly cared for her. However, raising Anna alone meant she often had to take her child with her when she worked at the bar. So she didn't have much time to care for her child. As the years passed and Anna grew up, Marianne's family members realized that she had been treating her daughter like an adult. She expected Anna to demonstrate independence and responsibility, even though she was still young. Anna was a very sociable and creative child. However, she often has to be alone, especially on days when her mother, Marianne, worked late and slept during the day. Marianne understood that this lifestyle was not suitable for raising a child. Despite this, Anna, 7 years old, loves having her own freedom. She explores her neighborhood, wandering alone, play with pets, and meeting different people, including people with bad intentions. This eventually got her into trouble. On May 5, 1980, Marianne and Anna got into an argument. The reason was that Marianne woke up in a bad mood, while Anna wanted to skip school. Anna expressed a desire to go to the park to play with her friends. Marianne eventually relents and allows her daughter to go, unaware of her daughter's true plans. When she returned home from work that evening, she realized Anna still hadn't come back. After waiting for a few hours, she decided to go out and search for her. She asked some of Anna's friends and their parents if they had seen her, but no one had any information. It was as if Anna had simply disappeared. Realizing she couldn't handle the situation alone, she reached out to the police to report the incident. The next day, a woman went to the police station, intending to report her future fiancé. She claimed that he had confessed to murdering a girl who occasionally visited their apartment to play with cats. She mentioned that the girl's name was Anna. After listening to the woman's testimony, police realized that all signs pointed to a 30-year-old man named Klaus Grabowski as the suspect. After feeling guilty, he confided in her about the crime, leading to a heated argument between them. Following the fight, he went to a bar and got extremely drunk. It turned out that he was a man with a criminal record. He had previously been convicted of crimes involving 2 young girls. While in custody, he underwent a psychological evaluation, which revealed that he had an attraction to minors and almost unable to control himself. Consequently, instead of being sent to prison, he was directed to a psychological treatment center. After many years, the authorities offered Klaus a chemical castration procedure in exchange for his early release. Without hesitation, he agreed. The procedure is virtually painless, involves a series of injections that reduce the levels of hormones that cause sexual arousal and desire. The aim is that the person undergoing this treatment will no longer have the desire to commit crimes. However, experts now say this method does not completely eliminate obsessive thoughts and fantasies. In Klaus's case, this method was not effective. One of the reasons this trick doesn't work is because it can easily backfire. Nonetheless, Klaus was released and soon after was no longer monitored by the authorities. Years later, he underwent hormone treatment to restore the changes caused by chemical castration and raise his testosterone levels, and this was not opposed by the authorities. This was largely because he expressed a desire to start a family, presenting himself as someone leading a normal, happy life. To maintain this image and support himself, he opened a small butcher shop. Over time, most people around him forgot the bad reputation about his past. The day after Anna was murdered, the police went to Klaus's house, but he was not there. He had hidden Anna's body and left a note for his fiancée, begging her to come to a bar that evening to discuss the incident. The police used this opportunity and arrested him as soon as he arrived at the bar. After his arrest, he claimed he had no intention of harming Anna. He made a shocking defense, saying that she had seduced him and even extorted money from him. He then revealed that he had hidden Anna's body in a cardboard box by a nearby canal. Marianne was devastated when the authorities came to inform her of the tragic death of her daughter Anna. However, the most difficult period of her life was not over yet. During the lengthy trial, she had to listen to testimonies from various witnesses who criticized her as a bad mother. They claimed that Anna was abandoned and raised on the streets. Those interviewed suggested that such a tragedy could have happened at any time, due to Marianne's late working hours at the bar. These accusations hurt her deeply, making her feel sad and angry. What worried her most was the fear that Klaus might avoid the punishment he deserved. Klaus clearly had mental issues. That made it highly unlikely he would go to prison. In response, Marianne decides to plot revenge for the death of her daughter, Anna. She also knew that she would have to take drastic actions. Meanwhile, Klaus maintained his stance, claiming that Anna had seduced him and later extorted money, even though she is only 7 years old. He argued that Anna's behavior was the main reason he committed the crime. After hearing his false testimony, Marianne felt she had no choice but to buy a gun. After purchasing a pistol, Marianne spent months practicing in secret so that her family would not find out. She realized she could no longer tolerate Klaus's lies. Her patience was reaching its limit. On March 6, 1981, she arrived at the Lübeck District Court around 10 a.m., a few minutes late. She stood straight, hands in the pockets of her thin coat, her face expressionless. She stopped a few meters away from Klaus and stood silently behind him, like a statue. At that time, everything was still going on normally. Somehow Marianne brought a pistol into the courthouse, despite tight security measures. She felt as if time had stopped, but this feeling only lasted for a few seconds. Then, she realized that it was time for her to act. At that moment, Klaus, the man who killed her daughter, was giving a new testimony. He stood before the judge, completely unaware of what was going on behind his back. Meanwhile, Marianne pulled a pistol out of her pocket. She attacked Klaus's back 7 times, hitting him 6 times, killing him instantly. Despite carrying out her plan, her expression remained unchanged, reflecting her determination. After committing the act, she did not run away or resist when arrested by the guards. Soon, one of the court employees approached Klaus and informed him that there was no further assistance available to him. At that moment, a clear expression of relief appeared on Marianne's face, contrasting sharply with her earlier emotions. Of course, this is not the end of the story. She would face a trial she could not escape. Those who saw or interacted with Marianne during this time noted that she appeared to be in a trance-like state. Due to her state, the forensic psychiatrist conducted a preliminary examination to diagnose or gain insight into her mental condition. During this process, the specialist handed Marianne a piece of paper and a pen, asking her to write something. The specialist attempted to analyze her handwriting without revealing the experiment's purpose. Marianne picked up a pencil and wrote, "She did it for her daughter, Anna." She also drew 7 hearts next to the phrase, each heart representing a year of Anna's life or each bullet that hit Klaus. The following day, all the German newspapers featured a photo of Marianne Bachmeier, calling her the vengeful mother. Marianne faced charges of murdering Klaus Grabowski in court. During the trial, she claimed that she was not fully aware of her actions and felt as though she was in a fog. She even mentioned seeing her daughter walk past her in the courtroom. Marianne made contradictory statements, which resulted in a bad impression of her in court. She claimed that she had acquired a firearm solely to harm herself, but this was met with skepticism in the courtroom. Many believed she had been practicing shooting for a long time before that day. Despite her actions, numerous people around the world supported her for seeking justice on her own terms and prevent Klaus from ever having the chance to be free again. Conversely, others viewed Marianne as undeserving of leniency and criticized she as a bad and irresponsible mother for giving up 2 children for adoption. In March 1983, after extensive jury deliberations, Marianne Bachmeier was found guilty of manslaughter and illegal possession of an unregistered firearm. She received a combined sentence of 6 years in prison. While incarcerated, she received flowers, candy, and supportive letters from many citizens. However, some argued that the state should not endorse vigilantism. In addition, the public expressed dissatisfaction with the West German justice system for letting Klaus, the man who committed crimes against minors, go unpunished. After the summer, the authorities decided that Marianne's sentence should not be as severe. A few years later, she married a teacher and moved to Accra, the capital of Ghana, where she lived until 1990. Eventually, she divorced her husband and relocated to Italy, specifically to Sicily, where she worked in a hospice. Marianne stayed in Italy until she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which led her to return to Germany. As her condition worsened, she asked a friend to film her final moments. She passed away from cancer on September 17, 1996, at the age of 46, in a hospital in Lübeck. She was laid to rest in a cemetery beside her daughter's grave, allowing them to finally be together. Welcome back. detectives, let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Amanda Colley. James and Amanda had been married for 8 years, and they had 2 children. Then, they divorcing in August 2015. Following the divorce, he moved in with his sister, Rhonda, whose house was just 20 meters from Amanda's. James begins dating a co-worker named Emmy and plans a future with her. Meanwhile, Amanda also begins a relationship with Lamar Dubber, someone she meets at work. However, James did not accept that the relationship between him and Amanda was over. He frequently asked Amanda if she was seeing anyone, though she never confirmed it. Despite this, James found other ways to gather information about her personal life. A week before the murder, Mike Deakins, a former neighbor and close friend, gave James a photo. The photo showed a shirtless man mowing the lawn at Amanda's previous house. This man was Lamar. On August 27th, James went to Amanda's house early in the morning to see things for himself. While the cameras did not capture James breaking into the house, he entered through the backyard. He entered Amanda's house and discovered that she wasn't there. She had apparently spent the night elsewhere. Enraged, he vandalized the home, throwing items around and damaged the TV. By 4:40 a.m., cameras recorded James arriving at Mike's house, loudly banging on the door. He wanted to show Mike what he had found in Amanda's house, recently purchased adult toys. By entering Amanda's home, James violated a restraining order she had filed against him, which prohibited him from coming near her or her property. Mike tried to calm him down, giving him a few cans of beer and advising him to go home, but he refused. At approximately 9:30 a.m. on August 27, 2015, Amanda drove back home, in the town of St. Augustine. She had spent the night at her new boyfriend's house, Lamar. When she entered her house, she was met with a shocking scene. Someone broke into and destroyed the whole house. Garbage was scattered across the floor. Clothes were strewn everywhere, and several items, including the TV, were damaged. Broken glass was scattered throughout the house. While Amanda was upset, but she wasn't surprised. That day, from 5 a.m., her ex-husband, James, kept texting and calling her, but she did not respond to any of his calls or messages. So she believed he was the one responsible for breaking into her house. About 30 minutes after Amanda returned home, her new boyfriend, Lamar Dubber, came to her house. He drove to her house, then turned left, so the car was not captured on camera. Not long after, a police car arrived, and officers questioned Amanda about what had happened. They inspected the house and spoke with her. They completed his duties and left at 10:29 a.m. Amanda's friends quickly came to support her. The first to arrive was Lindy Dobbins, a 39 years old, who had taken time off work to be there, as she was always willing to drop everything for her friends. Shortly after, another friend of hers, Rachel Hendricks, also came. The group gathered in the living room, trying to comfort she, when the sound of gunshots suddenly broke through the air. The shots shattered the glass doors leading to the backyard. Minutes after, surveillance footage captured Lamar running out of the home. He ran several blocks, then stopping to ask someone for help. Then, he called the police, reporting that shots had been fired at the house. When the operator asked if Lamar knew the shooter, he admitted he did, but claimed he didn't know what happened next because he had fled. He also said the shots did not hit anyone and he was certain he was the shooter's target. Then, Rachel ran out of the house and sought refuge at the neighbors. There, she called the police and reported that James had destroyed the house and that he had shot at everyone inside. Rachel also revealed that she had been hit by a bullet while escaping. Emergency services then received a call from Amanda and Lindy, but all they heard was screams and gunshots. When police arrived, they found Amanda's body inside the house. She had multiple gunshot wounds, and injuries to her hands and feet suggested she had tried to shield herself from the bullets. Lindy's body was discovered in a walk-in closet. She had been shot 3 times. Both Amanda and Lindy were dead. Rachel told the police that she saw the shooter in the backyard, near a pathway, and that he fired from there. Bullets found on the ground and holes in the glass supported her account. Lamar later returned to the crime scene and told investigators he had heard gunshots. Then, Lamar heard the shooter yell, "Where is he?" Lamar thinks he is the target. He ordered everyone to run. He escaped through the garage, while Lindy, Rachel, and Amanda fled toward the bedroom and bathroom. Rachel explained that she and Lindy hid in the bathroom, while Amanda stayed on the other side of the door. Rachel said the shooter entered the house, yelling, "Where is he?" Amanda tried to explain that only her friends were inside. But the shooter ignored her. Lindy spoke up, and the shooter fired at the bathroom door. A bullet hit Rachel's hand, causing her to release the door handle she had been holding. There was a bullet that hit Lindy in the leg, injuring her, but not killing her. The shooter then forced the door open, approached Lindy, and shot her. During this chaos, Rachel managed to run out of the house. Rachel saw the shooter's face and immediately recognized him as Amanda's ex-husband, James Terry Colley Jr. She had seen him before, when he came to pick up his children. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they followed James's trail and came to the street next door. There, they found his phone, without a SIM card, but his car was missing. Despite searching the area extensively, including using helicopters, they couldn't locate him. The county sheriff has issued a manhunt for James because they believed he was still carrying a weapon and dangerous, especially after murdering Amanda and Lindy in broad daylight. A few hours later, police in Northern Virginia apprehended James. He was driving his sister's car and was carrying several weapons, including the .45 caliber pistol used in the shootings. He was arrested in Virginia and charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, burglary, and stalking. However, he pleaded not guilty to the charges. Detectives reconstructed the incident by analyzing James' actions from 4:45 a.m., which was crucial to understanding his motives. The prosecutor argued that the motive for the murder stemmed from a photo of Lamar and an adult toy he found at Amanda's house. After leaving Mike's house, he began texting and calling Amanda. During this time, he contacted her 22 times. He threatened her, telling her not to do anything, otherwise he would reveal damaging information about her in court and to their children. He begged her to talk to him, saying she could tell him the whole truth and threatening to come and get her. The last call occurred at 10:22 a.m., just minutes before the shooting began. Amanda answered only 3 of James's calls. The first 2 were brief, but the last one lasted about 15 minutes. Prosecutors say this final call led to James' subsequent actions. James's defense attorneys argued that he was not guilty because he was under the influence of a medicine. 2 days before the incident occurred, James began taking of anxiety medication and painkillers. On August 26th, he consumed several cans of beer and continued drinking the next day. After breaking into Amanda's house and visiting Mike, he returned to his sister's home, took sleeping pills, and went to bed. A few hours later, he woke up, still impaired by the medication. When James arrived at Amanda's house, he had appeared in court for violating a restraining order that prohibited him from approaching Amanda or her home. He calmly underwent the pre-hearing examination and appeared calm. During the hearing, he answered all the questions and claimed he had not used any substances. He admitted to violating the restraining order without dispute. However, after leaving the courtroom, James resumed contacting Amanda through calls and messages. On his way home, he stopped at a gas station. Later, at his sister's house, police uncovered evidence suggesting he had prepared for murder. In his bedroom, they found an empty pistol holster, a shotgun case in the closet, a gym bag containing .45 caliber bullets, the same type used to kill Amanda, and a case for a .9 pistol under the bed. His nightstand contained his medications, along with adult toys he had taken from Amanda's home. James' defense team began looking for reasons to explain his behavior. They consulted a pharmacologist and a psychologist to determine if the medications James was taking could have caused mental impairment. Terry Shoemaker, his defense attorney, noted that James seemed unusually strange when he appeared in court that morning. While there was no doubt he committed the shooting, the primary question was what led him to do it. Terry could not understand why James, a man who was always devoted to his family, could do such a cruel thing as to make his children become motherless. During the interrogation, James appeared nervous, sweating and trembling. The defense wants to determine whether the drugs James was taking could have caused his memory loss or sleepwalking episodes. At the same time, Terry believes he was not fully aware of his actions. Rachel Hendricks testified in court, identifying James as the shooter. She recounted hearing the sound of breaking glass and seeing James standing in the backyard at the time of the incident. Mike testified, describing the clues that the jury believed led James to commit the murder. Specifically, a photo of Lamar and an adult toy that James found in Amanda's home. Mike agreed with James that these items suggested Amanda was cheating on him, but advised him to let it go and go home. Mike noted that he appeared deeply upset and even cried. The court also examined text messages from James, which showed he was increasingly frustrated with Amanda, as well as with her two friends, Lindy and Rachel. He blamed Lindy for making Amanda turn against him. In messages sent in July, he expressed anger, claiming that after Amanda became close to Lindy, she no longer had feelings for him. The court also listened to a voicemail James left for Amanda on the day of the murder. In that voice message, other voices can be heard. It is believed that at the time, James was at his sister's house preparing and collecting weapons. James also called his father, who yelled at him and called him an idiot. It seems he was planning to visit Amanda's house. Then, a dog walker nearby overheard their argument. She heard James's father telling him to come home and to stop whatever he was planning. The argument became more heated, with both yelling, and James saying he couldn't take it anymore. After evaluating the evidence, the defense decided to shift their strategy. Video footage from a gas station, along with messages and calls, confirmed that James was clear-headed and not under the influence of medicine, contrary to their initial assumption. Because this approach was unsuccessful, the defense called James' sister, Rhonda, as a witness. Rhonda was not present at the time of the murder, as she was on vacation in Italy. She stated that James did not plan the murder in advance. She told detectives that she had kept .45 and .380 caliber pistols in the car, but later mentioned they might have been either .40 or .45 caliber. It was only in court that she confirmed the weapon stored in her car was used to kill Amanda. When asked by the lawyer why she couldn't specify the caliber, she explained that she had been taking medication at the time and couldn't remember the details clearly. However, after undergoing therapy, her memory of the incident improved. She also clarified that she did not store extra bullets in the car because the gun was already loaded. This crime was classified as second-degree murder because there was not enough evidence to prove it was premeditated. The jury deliberated for hours before confirming the verdict of second-degree murder. James's mother expressed unconditional love for her son, regardless of the situation. A week later, the jury met again to determine whether James's actions warranted the death penalty. In response, the defense presented testimony from witnesses, arguing that James was under the influence of medicine at the time of the crime. Psychiatrist Mark Mills testified that he was not in his right mind, due to side effects from the pills, explaining that he was experiencing parasomnia, a condition in which the patient cannot recall his or her actions. A pharmacologist provided similar testimony to support this claim. Ultimately, the jury decided that James should receive the death penalty. A final hearing was held, giving James's lawyer one opportunity to present mitigating evidence to avoid the death sentence. During this hearing, James spoke briefly, describing the murder as a terrible accident. He apologized and expressed regret, wishing things had turned out differently. Despite his statement, James was unable to have his sentence commuted, and the Florida Supreme Court upheld all charges. Amanda's families and Linda's families remained devastated by the tragedy. Amanda's mother stated that, while James received the death penalty, but nothing could bring her daughter and Lindy back to life. It was a heartbreaking incident. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Nancy Kissel. Robert Kissel was born on April 21, 1963 in New York. He and his brother Andrew attended technical college and then went on to college in New York. Those who know him describe he as a resourceful person who studies hard and always tries to achieve his current success. In the 1980s, Robert met Nancy, who would later become his wife. After falling in love, they married, and Nancy adopted Robert's last name. She worked as a manager at a taxi company and occasionally took on part-time jobs at a restaurant and bar. Before this, she had worked at a restaurant on Broadway in Manhattan. Robert started his career with a small position in the finance and banking industry. As he gained experience, his career advanced, and his family grew. Eventually, his family had 3 children, making them a family of 5. With the growing family came increasing expenses, including maintenance, including living expenses, tuition fees, and other needs. During this time, Robert received a job offer from the Asian Special Situations Group, which came with a lucrative salary. However, the offer had 2 conditions. He would need to work longer hours, and the family would have to relocate to Hong Kong for the position. In December 1997, the family packed up their belongings and moved to Hong Kong. Life there was drastically different from what they were used to back home, and all 5 family members had to adjust to a new lifestyle. Fortunately, some of the changes were positive. Hong Kong featured superior food quality and a modern transportation system on par with the United States. Initially, the family had to make a lot of effort to stabilize their life, but over time, things started to fall into place. They eventually moved into the largest private housing complex in Tai Lam. Robert advanced in his career and became vice president of the Asian Special Situations Group. By 2000, he was managing the asset division, earning an impressive $3 million annually. As his career took off, his wife Nancy also found success. She became actively involved in the parent committee at the local school. The two were considered a high-profile, high-powered couple. Although they appear perfect on the outside, they are still facing problems in their marriage. The happy image they presented to the public was a facade that hid the real problems behind. Since the family moved to Hong Kong, Robert began drinking heavily and sometimes to excess. He was also said to have used illegal drugs. Although these allegations have never been verified, Nancy later insisted that they were true. Despite facing these problems, their family still sticks together. Throughout their time in Hong Kong, their friends never suspected that anything was wrong. Financially, the Kissel family was very well off. They owned a luxury apartment in a prestigious area of Hong Kong with a park view, as well as a beautiful country house in the U.S. Since Robert held an important position at his company and couldn't leave his job, it was decided that Nancy would take the children to the U.S. Nancy moved to their spacious country house, which was not fully equipped for long-term living. Given their wealth, the family decided to renovate and expand the house. So Nancy began the construction process by ordering the necessary equipment and hiring workers. While the home was being renovated, Nancy noticed a man working at her house. His name was Michael, an electrician living in the Vermont area. He had been married twice and was financially unstable, a far cry from her husband Robert, who was earning over $3 million a year. However, for Nancy, money was not the main reason she was attracted to Michael. Perhaps Michael's peaceful lifestyle gave Nancy what she was missing. Robert, however, began to suspect that something was amiss. As an intelligent and observant person, he noticed changes in Nancy's behavior, but the distance between them made it difficult for him to confirm his doubts. As the months passed, Nancy and Michael grew closer. He eventually hired a private detective to keep an eye on Nancy, and after a few weeks, his suspicions were confirmed. She and Michael were spending a significant amount of time together. In the summer of 2003, Robert pleaded with Nancy and the children to return to Hong Kong, hoping to salvage their marriage. However, she continued her secret relationship with Michael. Despite being in Hong Kong, she maintained their relationship over the phone. When the family returned to the U.S. temporarily for Robert's medical procedure, she even met Michael at a hotel, while her husband, Robert, was in surgery. As time passed, the relationship between Nancy and Robert continued to decline. They put on a happy face in public, but their arguments were intense and frequent. He becomes increasingly disappointed in her, who is now happy with Michael. Their marriage became unstable, and it was clear that things would come to a head soon. On November 2, 2003, the Kissel family was at home, in their Hong Kong apartment. It was a weekend, so the kids were home from school and had a friend over. As the evening approached, the friend's father, Nick, stopped by to pick her up. Nancy made strawberry milkshakes for everyone, and they all enjoyed them together before Nick left. At that moment, Nick had no idea it was the last time he would see Robert alive. Robert, a hard-working employee, had a critical online work call scheduled for the weekend. Despite weeks of preparation, he failed to join the call, leaving his colleagues worried. The next day, he didn't show up to work. The management quickly learned about his absence. The vice president, David, called Robert's home and his wife, Nancy, answered. She said he was having some personal problems. However, David found this explanation unconvincing. As the week progressed, concerns about Robert's disappearance grew, and David decided to report the incident to the authorities. Soon after the report, authorities visited the Kissel residence, where they met Nancy and her 3 children. As anticipated, Robert was absent. The officers began to feel concerned about the situation. Although there were no suspicious signs at first, they still felt something was wrong when looking at the way Nancy acted and talked about Robert. She said she filed a missing person report for Robert that morning and accused him of assaulting her. However, they did not completely believe her story because there were several things that did not make sense. So they decided to a more thorough search of the property. By midnight on November 6, investigators found an important clue. A staff member at the complex said that Nancy had asked for help moving an old carpet into the apartment garage. The carpet was so heavy that it took 4 staff members to move it. These people complained that the carpet had a strong fishy smell. When checking the garage in the storage room, investigators quickly discovered the carpet. Behind the door was a rolled-up oriental carpet, secured with ropes and wrapped in tape. On top of the carpet, there was a pillow and a bag containing simple items. This situation made everyone feel very strange. A few minutes later, as the carpet was unrolled, investigators uncovered the body of a man. His head was covered with a plastic bag, and his entire body had been wrapped in another plastic bag and tied with tape. The body was identified as Robert. Investigators quickly determined that he had been dead for a long time, as the strong smell of decomposition suggested that this was not a recent death. On the night of November 7 at 2:41 a.m., just 2 hours after Robert's body was discovered, Police arrested Nancy and charged her with the murder of her husband. Forensic investigators determined that Robert had been attacked 5 times with a blunt object. In his stomach, they found 6 prescription drugs, including a powerful sleeping pill. Notably, 5 of the 6 drugs had been prescribed to Nancy, making her involvement in the crime all the more clear. One bizarre incident occurred after Nick brought his daughter home from the Kissel residence, where they had all consumed Nancy's strawberry milkshake. Nick's wife noticed that he appeared unusually flushed, exhausted, and quickly fell into a deep sleep on the sofa. Worried that he might be unwell, she tried to wake him, but despite shouting and slapping his cheeks, he remained unresponsive. When Nick finally woke up, he was extremely hungry, ate his dinner, and devoured 3 servings of ice cream. Shortly after, he lost control of his bowels and was unable to reach the toilet in time, staining the sofa. He then fell asleep again and didn't wake up until the next day, with almost no memory of the previous evening. He described his condition as similar to experiencing amnesia. Investigators later discovered that before his death, Robert had hired a private investigator to follow Nancy. This included installing spyware on her computer, which exposed her search history. Among her searches were terms like sleeping pills overdose and drugs that cause heart attack. Nancy admitted to these searches but offered an explanation. She claimed she had been researching these drugs for personal reasons. She explained that the stress of work and frequent arguments with Robert had driven her to despair, intending to harm herself. However, she said she didn't want her children to suspect anything and planned to make her death appear as a heart attack. Based on information gleaned from internet searches, Nancy consulted several doctors in Hong Kong and received 5 prescriptions. The list of medications surprised investigators as it included strong sleeping pills, tranquilizers, painkillers, and antidepressants. Nancy's trial began in June 2005. She stated that her marriage to Robert started to decline in 1997 when they moved to Hong Kong. According to her, he began abusing alcohol and drugs during this time, becoming increasingly violent. She said his behavior left her distressed and often depressed. The main question is what happened the night Robert went missing. The prosecution argued that she had been stockpiling various medications for months leading up to Robert's death. On October 2, 2003, she allegedly mixed the drugs into his cocktails. However, it's unclear why she also added the drugs to Nick's drink. What is certain is that she drugged both men. Nick was lucky; he recovered and survived. Robert, on the other hand, lost consciousness on his bed. Nancy then hit him in the head 5 times with a blunt object. Tragically, he died from these injuries, and his body remained on the bed throughout the night. The next morning, she visited a carpet dealer and purchased a large oriental rug. After bringing it home, she used the rug to wrap Robert's body and stored it in a closet for 3 days. Later, she sought assistance in moving the rug to the garage. Nancy, however, tells a very different story. She claims that in the 2 weeks before Robert was murdered, they had been arguing violently about divorce, and that the argument flared up again on the night of the murder. Nancy said that while she was making strawberry milkshakes for her children, Robert approached her and revealed that he had filed for divorce and intended to take the children to live with him. According to her version, he was holding a baseball bat, which made her feel endangered. She picked up a heavy statue for protection and followed him down the hallway. A confrontation began, during which she spat in his face. She alleged that he struck her, and as they wrestled on the floor, he grabbed her ankles. In what she described as self-defense, she swung the statue at him, hitting him. He responded by striking her with the bat. She admitted to striking him several more times, which unintentionally resulted in his death. Nancy stated that she lost her memory due to the shock of the incident and could only vaguely recall her actions afterward. However, her story made many people suspicious. She claimed that she and Robert fought using a bat and a statue, but experts found no dents or scratches on the bat. Additionally, no traces of DNA from either she or her husband, Robert, were found on it, casting doubt on her story. Furthermore, CCTV footage from the following day showed she buying a carpet, and in the video, she showed no signs of injury. Despite these inconsistencies, Nancy maintained her innocence and refused to provide further justification. On September 1, 2005, the court delivered its verdict. Nancy was found guilty of murdering her husband, Robert. According to Hong Kong law, the mandatory sentence for murder is life imprisonment. During her sentencing, Nancy, dressed entirely in black, displayed no emotion. Her case will be reviewed every 2 years, allowing the governing authorities to decide whether to reduce her sentence. Nancy is serving her sentence in a women's prison, a stark contrast to the luxurious Parkview apartment she once lived in. Nancy's lover, Michael, a builder, had called her both shortly before and after the crime, yet prosecutors never considered him a suspect. Although she tried to keep in touch with him, he eventually broke up with her. He later got married and informed she about it, even sending her a wedding photo of him and his wife smiling. After Robert's death, his children were sent to the United States to live with Nancy's father. However, due to his old age, he struggled to care for them. Eventually, Robert's brother, Andrew, took custody of the children. Tragically, in April 2006, Andrew was found stabbed to death in the basement of his mansion in Greenwich. This devastating incident added further trauma to the lives of Robert and Nancy's children. At the time of Robert's death, his fortune was valued at approximately $18 million. His 3 children inherited the entire estate, securing their financial future. However, this wealth came at an immense cost. The loss of both their parents. Nancy lost all her appeals and remains in prison to this day, likely to spend the rest of her life behind bars. Michael is alive and well, living far away from Nancy, the woman who took the life of her husband and the father of her 3 children. Nancy had fallen out of love with Robert, and the pressures of her life, along with her unhappiness in the marriage, have driven her to seek comfort in her lover, Michael. However, none of this justifies the extreme actions she ultimately chose. It is said that Robert offered Nancy half of his assets in the dispute, but she refused and wanted the whole thing, and did not need he in her life. Her selfish and cruel decisions have now left her in prison, separated from Robert, her children, his fortune, and her lover.
Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sierra Jugan. Sierra Jugan was a bright and cheerful young woman who spread joy and laughter wherever she went. Her adventurous nature and ability to find humor in any situation made her a delight to be around, even when she made mistakes. As she entered high school, Sierra's confidence and enthusiasm only grew. She fearlessly tried out new experiences, including volleyball, and showed remarkable poise both on and off the court. After returning from a family vacation on July 19, 2016, Sierra was excited to start the new semester at the University of Toledo, where she had plans to study abroad. She had recently bought a new bike and was eager to take it for a spin. Her mom wanted to discuss her study abroad plans with her, but Sierra decided to visit her boyfriend Josh's house, which was 7.12 miles away beforehand. Sierra left her house in high spirits, wearing shorts and a tank top, and promised her mom she would be back by 10:05 p.m. However, when Josh tried to reach her later, her phone went straight to voicemail. Alarmed, Josh called Sierra's mom, who immediately sensed that something was wrong. Sierra's family, including her aunt and Josh, mounted a search effort to locate her after she went missing. They thoroughly searched the neighborhood, suspecting she might have been involved in an accident. Despite their efforts, they didn't find any clues or signs of Sierra's whereabouts. As time passed, Sierra's family became increasingly worried. Her mom eventually contacted the police, who arrived about an hour later. A concerned neighbor informed the family that County Road 6 was blocked off, and they rushed to the scene. There, they found a chaotic atmosphere and officers who wouldn't allow them to pass. The officers weren't able to provide any information, leaving Sierra's family in a state of panic. In desperation, they decided to seek help from the FBI. As the night wore on, Sierra's family was left to wonder what had happened to their daughter, unable to rest due to their growing concern. The next day, Sierra's mom and aunt started searching for her by calling hospitals, looking for any unidentified females. Although they didn't find anything, they got a promising lead from Detroit, Michigan. A young woman who looked a lot like Sierra was in the hospital after escaping from a moving vehicle with serious injuries. To confirm her identity, a nurse asked Sierra's family to describe any distinctive marks on her body. Sierra's mom mentioned a scar on her calf and her pierced belly button. The woman in the hospital seemed to match Sierra's description, giving the family hope that they had finally found her. However, their hopes were soon dashed when they discovered that the woman in the hospital was not Sierra after all. The family was devastated to learn that the person found wasn't Sierra, as they had pinned their hopes on it being her. Later that morning, police officers came to Sierra's house to update them on the previous night's events. One of the officers had discovered a disturbed cornfield near the area while parking his car. He noticed signs of a struggle inside the cornfield and found a motorcycle track. To avoid contaminating potential evidence, he retreated without touching anything. As he retreated, he caught a glimpse of something shiny that turned out to be Sierra's purple bike. Further investigation revealed several items at the scene, including male and female sunglasses, a bloody sock, and a screwdriver. Based on these findings, the police believed that Sierra had likely been abducted from that location. Detectives investigating Sierra's disappearance interviewed her friends and family to learn more about her boyfriend, Josh. They found out that Sierra and Josh had been close friends since childhood, starting from when they were just 7 years old. As they grew older, their friendship turned into a romantic relationship in their first year of high school, and they became known for being a happy and adventurous couple. Skiing was one of their shared hobbies, and they would often go skiing together. After high school, Sierra went to the University of Toledo, while Josh attended Bowling Green. Despite the physical distance between them, they remained committed to each other and would often talk about getting married someday. However, Sierra wanted to focus on her education before settling down, showing how dedicated she was to her studies. Despite the challenges of being apart, their relationship remained strong and serious. On July 19th, detectives learned that Sierra had visited Josh's house in the early afternoon. She left his house around 6:30 p.m. to return home, and Josh, concerned for her safety, accompanied her on his motorcycle for part of the way. However, after a few miles, Sierra insisted that Josh turn around and let her ride her bike the rest of the way home alone. Josh reluctantly agreed, and they parted ways. Josh headed back on his motorcycle, while Sierra continued riding her bike. During the investigation into Sierra's disappearance, detectives found motorcycle tracks in the corn stalks near Sierra's bike. This discovery raised a key question. Did these tracks come from Josh's motorcycle? The detectives couldn't ignore this potential connection and began investigating further to see if they could link Josh to the scene of Sierra's disappearance. They set up a command post to gather and analyze any relevant clues. A promising lead emerged quickly. A local resident came forward, saying he had found a motorcycle helmet on the side of the road on July 14th while driving. He picked it up and stored it in his truck. After learning about Sierra's disappearance, he examined the helmet more closely and discovered red stains that appeared to be blood. The helmet was found in the same general area where Sierra's bike was discovered in the cornfield. The detectives asked Josh about his motorcycle helmet, and to their relief, he produced it, confirming he had it with him. They also verified his alibi by speaking with his parents, like ruling him out as a suspect. Although visibly shaken, Sierra's family never considered Josh responsible for her disappearance. The detectives were determined to identify the owner of the blood-stained helmet, recognizing the significance of DNA evidence. They sent the helmet to the crime lab for testing, anticipating a potential breakthrough. The detectives waited patiently for the results, hoping it would lead them closer to solving the case. The news of Sierra's disappearance spread quickly throughout the town, prompting the community to come together to search for her. Citizens joined forces, organizing search parties that scoured every possible area, searching for any clue that could lead to her whereabouts. As the townspeople worked tirelessly to bring Sierra home safely, they felt a strong sense of unity. To show their support, the community organized a candlelight vigil at the local high school. The atmosphere was emotional, filled with grief, hope, and determination. Hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and sending their thoughts and prayers for Sierra's safe return. After 2 days of investigation, the police received a tip about a suspicious van seen speeding through the area. They suspected that Sierra might have been taken in the van, possibly falling victim to sex trafficking. The police received a tip about a license plate number linked to a van that was speeding through the area where Sierra went missing. They interviewed the van's owner, who explained that he had sped up because another vehicle had suddenly approached from behind, possibly a family member searching for Sierra. This had startled him, causing him to quickly leave the area, which may have given the impression that he was involved in Sierra's disappearance. After 48 hours of investigation, the police had no leads on Sierra's whereabouts. As each day passed, her family's hopes of finding her alive were dwindling. The police continued their door-to-door search, which eventually led them to a nearby farm that belonged to James Worley. The farm had several structures, including a house, a trailer, and a large barn. The police questioned James Worley about the day Sierra disappeared, hoping to get any information that could help them find her. To the detectives' surprise, James revealed that he had been riding his motorcycle on the day Sierra went missing. However, he claimed that his bike had broken down, causing him to lose some items, including a screwdriver and his helmet. The detectives were stunned, as these were the same items found at the scene of Sierra's abduction. This revelation raised significant suspicions about James. The detectives were determined to investigate further and questioned James about Sierra's disappearance. They noticed scratches on his face, indicating that he had been involved in a struggle. This discovery only increased their suspicions and raised more questions. They wondered if the scratches were the result of a confrontation with Sierra. The detectives decided to investigate James's background, hoping to uncover relevant information. What they discovered sent chills down their spines. James had a dark criminal history, including a previous attempt to abduct a 26-year-old woman named Robin Garder on July 4, 1989. On that day, Robin was getting ready for a neighborhood picnic when she decided to go for a bike ride. As she rode, she became thirsty and contemplated returning home. However, before she could make that decision, a car approached from behind and collided with her bike. The impact sent Robin flying into a nearby ditch. The driver, who later turned out to be James, approached Robin and asked if she was okay. However, he soon revealed sinister intentions, striking her in the back of the head and threatening her life with a screwdriver. He forced her into his car, attempting to handcuff her. Robin resisted fiercely, preventing him from securing the second cuff. Despite being on the verge of losing consciousness, Robin continued to fight. She screamed for help, but her cries were drowned out by the desolate cornfields. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a motorcycle approaching. The rider noticed her distress and stopped to help. Robin escaped by climbing onto the back of the motorcycle, leaving her captor behind. The motorcyclist drove Robin home, where she collapsed. Her mother called the police and an ambulance, and Robin was rushed to the hospital. The motorcyclist then led the police back to the scene, where they found James still present with his car. James cooperated fully, providing identification, but his account of the events differed significantly from the truth. He denied any intention of abducting Robin, but the detectives were not convinced. James Worley claimed that he had to restrain Robin with handcuffs after a bike accident to prevent her from harming herself, not to harm her. He said he was concerned about her well-being and wanted to get her help. However, James had a dark past. In 1989, he was arrested for trying to kidnap Robin and was found guilty, receiving a 6 to 10-year sentence. Due to good behavior, he was released after 3 years. When Robin learned of his release, she was terrified, fearing he might harm her again. The police had reason to suspect James in Sierra's disappearance, given his criminal history. They obtained a search warrant for his residence, which he shared with his mother. Initially, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but upon inspecting his expansive backyard, they found a suspicious barn. Inside the barn, they discovered a small green crate containing labeled and sealed bags of women's clothing, including a pair of bloody purple panties. The detectives also found a hidden freezer, air mattress with stains, zip ties, duct tape, and handcuffs. James claimed the items were for a porn business, but the evidence suggested otherwise. The police collected all the items for DNA testing, and the evidence led to James's arrest for Sierra's murder. The investigation continued, with the police searching every inch of James's property, including a pond, which they drained to search for evidence. The question on everyone's mind was, where was Sierra's body? The detectives expanded their investigation to the attic's front insulation and neighboring properties, recognizing that evidence might have been dispersed beyond James's property. They thoroughly explored all leads. A farmer reported a suspicious area in his field where the corn seemed matted down, with a nearby mound of dirt that resembled a potential grave. The farmer's concerns were heightened due to the ongoing search for Sierra, so he quickly contacted the police. The police responded promptly, noticing a fresh pile of dirt that fueled their suspicions. They carefully processed the area, avoiding potential evidence disturbance. Despite their thorough search, no clues were found regarding Sierra's whereabouts. The detectives then searched adjacent farms using drones and helicopters to cover more ground. They soon discovered a mound of dirt with freshly matted corn, with trained dogs indicating a potential crime scene. As they dug, they made a grim discovery: human remains, later confirmed to be Sierra's body. Tragically, her hands were bound behind her back, and her feet were tied to handcuffs. An object was lodged in her mouth, restricting her airway, which ultimately led to her death. The devastating news was delivered to the Sierra family that night. The family was overwhelmed with grief, and their sorrow was palpable. 1 month after the abduction and murder, James Worley was indicted on 19 counts, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. 2 years later, Worley stood trial, pleading not guilty despite overwhelming evidence. The state presented a terrifying story over 8 intense days, and the jury deliberated for 6 hours before finding Worley guilty on all counts related to Sierra's murder. The sentence imposed was death. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rola Pespiragou. Rola Pespiragou was born in 1989 in Patras, Greece. She had a younger sister named Dimitra, who was 8 years her junior. The sisters primarily grew up with their grandparents. Rola was known for her spirited personality and was often described as a mischievous girl. She pursued a medical education to become a nurse, but never worked in that field. Throughout her life, she tried various professions, but her true passion was football. While working as a football referee, Rola met her future husband, Manos Daskalaki, who was a goalkeeper at the time. Rola, 22 years old, was deeply in love with 19-year-old Manos. They began dating, and soon after, Rola became pregnant, and they two decided to marry, Manos's parents opposed their relationship, feeling embarrassed by Rulla's unusual behavior and the fact that she was 3 years older than him. However, this did not stop Manos. They got married in 2012. And soon after, their daughter Georgina was born. Like her mother, Georgina also developed a love for football, and Rulla took her to training sessions. In 2015, Melina, Manos and Rulla's second daughter, was born. Although on the surface they looked like a happy family with 2 children, in reality, many problems still existed within. They frequently argued, and Rulla struggled with depression, having attempted to end her life twice without success. A tragedy struck on April 13, 2019, when their 3.5-year-old daughter Melina died. She had been hospitalized with symptoms of a rare form of leukemia, which doctors assured them was fully treatable. Melina has overcome the disease. She was set to return home. Everything seemed fine. On that fateful day, Rulla was at the hospital with Melina. The little girl was in a cheerful mood, enjoying shashlik that her parents had brought. However, everything changed abruptly after her father, Manos, stepped out of the room. According to Rulla, they settled down for a nap shortly after he left. About an hour later, a nurse came in to administer medication, and just 10 minutes after that, at 4:40 p.m., Melina began trembling, wheezing, and have a seizure. Rulla cried out for her daughter, but when that didn't help, she ran to summon the nurses. They rushed to assist Melina, but it was too late. A forensic expert later determined that the cause of death was liver failure and pulmonary edema. The family was deeply affected by their grief. Manos and Rulla are back together, and their marriage grew stronger. In 2021, they welcomed their third child, Irita, and they felt happy again, believing that nothing could disrupt their joy. Tragically, just 6 months later, the baby passed away. She passed away in her sleep at their home in March 2021, while sharing a room with her mother, Rulla. According to the forensic examination, she died of sinus node aplasia and heart cell degeneration, leading to cardiac arrest. This disease usually occurs in the elderly and is rarely seen in children. However, doctors believe that this is a congenital disease. On that tragic night, Rulla's sister Dimitra was not staying over, leaving Rulla alone with the baby. Around 7:30 a.m., Irita woke up, and Rulla gave her a pacifier before they both tried to go back to sleep. When they checked on Irita at 11 a.m., she was unresponsive. In a panic, Rulla called Manos for help and attempted to perform CPR. After several unsuccessful tries, she decided to call an ambulance. An hour later, the paramedics arrived and confirmed Irita's death. Her body had already begun to cool and stiffen. The loss of her second child, Irita, raised many questions about Rulla's actions. Why did she not call an ambulance right away, instead of trying to resuscitate her child and contacting Manos? Valuable time was lost, and there were concerns that Irita might have been saved. Rulla explained that she was in shock, and an hour later, she realized she needed to call an ambulance. The family was left with one child, their eldest daughter Georgina. Before Irita's death, the relationship between Manos and Rulla was already strained, and the loss only increased the emotional distance between them. Their problems are getting more and more stressful, and divorce seemed imminent. Georgina also suffered from many health problems. Just 15 days after Irita's passing, she was hospitalized due to convulsions. The medical team tried their best to resuscitate her, and thanks to their efforts, she survived. However, she was diagnosed with heart failure, which led to the implantation of a defibrillator and a pacemaker. Following this, she was closely monitored by doctors and had to be re-hospitalized multiple times for encephalopathy, the cause of which remained unknown. She experienced seizures, and despite thorough examinations, the reasons for them could not be identified. The doctors decided to transfer her to a different clinic for further evaluation. Tragically, on January 29, 2022, 9-year-old Georgina passed away. This news shocked everyone, especially since she had seemed healthy. As doctors were trying to save the girl, her mother, Rola, suddenly declared her dead. She asked them to stop, saying that it was pointless and that she would not come back to life. She also said that Georgina had endured a lot of pain and suggested that it would be better for them to let her rest in peace. Rola's calm demeanor during this moment surprised the medical staff. A few hours after Georgina's passing, Rola shared a post on social media expressing her feelings. She stated that she had given life to Georgina but was upset that Georgina had left her. Rola highlighted that Georgina brought her joy and was a source of strength in her life. In her farewell message to her daughter, she wished Georgina to enjoy her reunion with her sisters. Rola also expressed that, in her heart, Georgina would always be with her, and she affirmed her love for all 3 of her children. In memory of her children, Rola got tattoos. She got her first tattoo after Georgina was born, and the others were done after the deaths of her 2 daughters, Melina and Nyrita. The circumstances surrounding the deaths of her 3 daughters raised suspicions. They all died within 3 years, one after the other. In each case, their health conditions appeared to be stable, and doctors were initially optimistic about their recovery. However, doctors were shocked by the sad outcome. This caused many doubts and speculations. Some people believed the Paspirigo family was cursed and that these deaths were the result of supernatural forces. Doctors were skeptical of Rola's explanation for her daughter's death and contacted law enforcement to investigate. The focus was on the eldest daughter, Georgina, as they had her medical records and her body for further examination. Investigators interviewed 20 doctors from 5 hospitals in Athens and Patras who had treated Georgina. A discrepancy arose between what the doctors reported and what Rola claimed. Initially, doctors suspected Georgina had heart problems. But later tests revealed little girl did not have any heart issues. Rola frequently reported seizures and neurological issues, but examinations did not show any evidence of these conditions. Instead, Georgina was diagnosed with gastroenteritis and psychological issues stemming from the deaths of her 2 younger sisters, and little girl was discharged. However, little girl was readmitted due to seizures, and her condition remained unclear. Plans were made to transfer her to a hospital with better monitoring capabilities, but unfortunately, she died before that could happen, despite appearing healthy at the time. Before her death, Georgina told doctors she felt as if there was a bomb in her stomach about to explode. She was concerned and tried to understand the deaths of her younger sisters, Melina and Nyrita, fearing something similar might happen to her. She shared her concerns with the doctors at the hospital. Manos and Rola initially denied any involvement in the children's deaths. They did some interviews and finally cleared the doubts about them. They spoke of the traumatic experience they faced, often using the word suddenly to stress that their children died unexpectedly and without warning, even though there were no signs that anything bad was imminent. According to Rola, Georgina had difficulty breathing. However, toxicology tests revealed no issues. The doctor confirmed that Georgina had no heart problems and mentioned her sudden death. However, the investigation is still ongoing. It was discovered that Rola was present with her 3 children at all 3 incidents, but she asserted that this said nothing. Rola declares that she is the children's mother, and that she has always been there for them. She didn't understand why that surprised everyone and told them to stop talking nonsense. Manos blamed the doctors and was confused because all tests showed the children's was healthy before his sudden death. He believed the treatment may have been wrong. Although toxicological tests performed after the girls' deaths yielded no findings. They were only conducted for the most common substances. So it was decided to do more extensive testing that would not normally be done. In the case involving Nyrita's death, Rolla called an ambulance too late. Similarly, in the case with Melina, Rolla delayed seeking help and only contacted the nurses 35 minutes after Melina had died, by which point her body had started to cool. Why did it take Rolla so long to ask for help? A forensic expert observed small scratches on Melina's nose, indicating that there might have been a struggle. In addition, tests showed that the concentration of ketamine in Georgina's body was very high, 6 times the normal amount used for anesthesia. Ketamine is not available at regular pharmacies and is hard to obtain, indicating that it could not have entered her system by accident. The drug was injected into Georgina's body just 20 minutes before her death. The question arises, who could have administered the ketamine if the doctors did not? The medical staff had last checked on her shortly before she died. And since Rolla was the only person present in the hospital room when little girl passed away, Rolla became a suspect in the murder. Later, the bodies of the 2 other girls, Melina and Nyrita, were exhumed. While no ketamine was found, but experts concluded that both Melina and Nyrita died of suffocation, and their deaths were classified as murder. A bloody handkerchief was discovered next to the baby's body. This handkerchief had been taken from the house. Rolla had requested its return but was denied. On March 30, 2022, police arrested 33-year-old Rolla Pispirigu at her younger sister's house in Patras. Rolla had a medical degree and was capable of obtaining the drug. She knows her actions well and does them consciously. Investigators established that several years ago, she attended seminars related to criminology. Rolla's younger sister, Dimitra, refused to believe that Rolla could be responsible for the children's deaths. She stated that she did not believe Rolla would have harmed her daughters and that if they did not die of natural causes, then someone else was to blame and should be punished. Dimitra confirmed that she did not see anything unusual while in the house during the time of Irita's death. However, others described Rolla as cold and emotionless, suggesting she could potentially be responsible for the tragedy. During the investigation of Georgina's notebook, a piece of paper was discovered that said, "Her mother, Rolla, is very evil." Neighbors reported witnessing Rolla physically abuse Georgina when little girl was just a baby. They informed the police, and the complaint was forwarded to social services, which monitored the family by making regular visits to their home. A message was found on Rolla's phone that she sent the day before Georgina's death, stating, "See what happens tomorrow." This message became a crucial piece of evidence against her. After Rolla's arrest, her husband, Manos, learned about the evidence and became convinced of her guilt, leading him to file for divorce. He was shocked by her actions and don't understand what her motive is. Manos mentioned that she was pregnant at the time of Georgina's death, but he suspected the child was not his since they had not been intimate for a long time. Following Georgina's death, Rolla quickly ended her pregnancy. Manos believed she might have been seeing another man to provoke jealousy, and he also questioned whether their middle daughter, Melina, and youngest daughter, Irita, were his biological children. When Rolla learned about the divorce, she became very angry. She sent a message to her friend, expressing her desire to cast a spell on her husband, Manos, to prevent him from leaving her. 2 weeks before Georgina's death, Manos proposed a divorce, prompting she to consult fortune tellers in hopes of keeping he. Unfortunately, this did not help. So what could Rolla's motives be? Initially, there was speculation that she might have Munchausen syndrome. This is a condition in which caregivers intentionally harm or create health problems for the person they care for, in order to gain attention or sympathy. However, this theory was later dismissed. It was then revealed that Manos had a mistress. Rolla was aware of the infidelity and was contemplating divorce herself. She desperately attempted to hold on to her husband, possibly seeking to regain his attention and rebuild the family. Rolla's younger sister, Dimitra, does not accept this hypothesis. She asserts that she advised Rolla to divorce Manos due to issues in their marriage. Although Rolla understood the problems, she hesitated to divorce for the sake of their children. Dimitra found it hard to believe that Rolla could be capable of such actions. A psychiatrist who evaluated Rolla concluded that her thoughts were entirely centered on her husband. She was obsessed with him, exhibiting intense jealousy towards other women. After Rolla was arrested, about 500 people gathered outside her home, expressing outrage and demanding the death penalty for killing her 3 children. At that time, her mother, younger sister, and other relatives were inside the home. The trial in this case is still in progress. Rolla is currently in custody, housed in a solitary VIP cell that includes various amenities. She does not interact with other inmates, and for her safety, she is under constant surveillance due to concerns that she may attempt to end her life. Rolla is charged with the murder of 3 children, but she continues to deny all allegations. She insists that she is a victim who has lost children and freedom. She believes this is a misunderstanding and is confident that she will be acquitted, released from prison, and able to repair her relationship with Manos. She has not yet accepted the reality of her divorce. Rolla's ex-husband, Manos, wants nothing to do with her. He is in a new relationship, planning a wedding, and hoping to have children. On March 29, 2024, Rolla Pispiragou was sentenced to life in prison by a jury in Athens. The jury unanimously found her guilty of the murder of her eldest daughter, Georgina. The court agreed with the prosecutor's recommendation for the sentence. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Hugelmayer. Raleigh, a rapidly growing city in northeastern North Carolina, is known for its rich history and beautiful oak trees. However, on September 1, 2017, a horrific crime rocked the city. That morning, at approximately 1 a.m., the Raleigh Police Department's 911 dispatch center received a call from 28-year-old Matthew Phelps. Phelps was distraught and said he had accidentally stabbed his wife, Lauren, to death while he was dreaming. He then suddenly woke up to find his wife lying in a pool of blood on the floor. "I took too much cough medicine and it affected me," Matthew explained to the operator, saying that it could cause a cold, but it made him feel better. He admitted that he had been unable to sleep at night. The operator asked Matthew to check on his wife, asking if she was breathing and if there was any visible movement in her chest. Matthew replied, "No, she didn't move." Then he noticed the blood on him and said it was dry, not wet. During the conversation, Matthew finally revealed the reason behind his strange behavior and revealed the events that led up to the incident. Patrol officers from the Raleigh Police Department arrived at Matthew's home on Patuxent Street. Upon entering the home, they found Lauren, 29, lying motionless on the floor, a bloody knife on the bed, and cough drops on the bathroom counter. Despite showing no signs of life, Lauren was taken to the hospital by paramedics, where she was pronounced dead. The investigation into Lauren's death led police to have conflicting theories about whether it was an accident or a targeted murder, after which they brought Matthew in for further questioning. An autopsy revealed the horrific extent of Lauren's injuries, with 123 stab wounds, including 44 to the face and the rest to the head, neck, and arms. The couple's social media profiles, which contain hundreds of photos, show a happy relationship. Matthew has a clean record, and from the outside, they appear to be a happy, carefree couple. However, it cannot be ruled out that Matthew's actions were influenced by a large dose of cough syrup. Can cause euphoria, delusions, and often make people act strangely. To unravel the mystery behind the murder, police dug into the couple's past. Lauren Hugelmayer was born on June 9, 1988, in Los Angeles County to a deeply religious family. Lauren had a normal childhood with her 2 older sisters, Beth and Brianna. Lauren graduated from Swain County High School in North Carolina in 2007. She went on to earn a degree in business administration and management from Appalachian State University in 2011. After completing her studies, she worked as an auditor at Quintiles. She also started a side business selling Scentsy products. She was very passionate about Scentsy, and her Facebook page was filled with photos and videos of her side business, including trips she took with other Scentsy sellers. Lauren was a member of Hope Lutheran Church, where she was a Sunday school teacher and taught children and youth at the church. In her mid-20s, Lauren reconnected with Matthew Phelps, a classmate of hers from high school. Lauren and Matthew initially lost touch after high school when he transferred schools, and Lauren's family moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. Notably, their childhood experiences were very different. While Lauren grew up in a loving family, Matthew was not so fortunate. Matthew's parents abandoned him at birth, leaving him to live with his grandparents from a young age. Matthew's parents divorced shortly after he was born. His biological father was not interested in him, and his mother remarried several times but never gave Matthew a family or a lasting relationship with any stepfather. Matthew grew up without parents, and despite his grandparents' best efforts to love and care for him, he felt a deep emotional void. This could have led to behavioral problems from an early age. He began hanging out with bad friends and developed a habit of abusing drugs and alcohol during his high school years. Matthew and his friends were known to regularly use quercetin, the same drug he claimed to have taken before attacking his wife. Of course, high doses do not cause a high, but Matthew and his friends took advantage of it anyway. Because of his addiction, Matthew's grandparents were forced to withdraw him from public high school and enroll him in a private Christian academy. This was successful, and Matthew improved significantly, earning better grades and eventually graduating. He then attended Clear Creek Baptist Bible College in Pineville, Kentucky, and graduated in 2011. Matthew was the one who came across Lauren's photo and realized they knew each other. After some hesitation, Matthew contacted Lauren through Instagram, liking every photo she posted. The two began talking, and their text messages quickly turned into long, late-night phone calls. Before long, both Matthew and Lauren were falling for each other. The two began a long-distance relationship, as Matthew was still living in Kentucky at the time. Despite living hundreds of miles apart, their relationship began to develop quickly. After a while, Matthew tried to visit Lauren and eventually moved to North Carolina to be with her. Since Lauren was very close to her family, she was happy to introduce Matthew to them. Most of her family members welcomed him, trusting Lauren's choice. They saw him as a kind man who truly cared about their daughter. Lauren's mother, Lori, thought Matthew was the right person for Lauren. However, Lauren's father, Dale, had reservations about the relationship. His concerns may have stemmed from his protective fatherly instincts, or perhaps it was intuition. In Dale's opinion, Matthew was moving too fast and that he was likely hiding a secret from Lauren. Despite his suspicions, Dale could not pinpoint exactly what made him feel uncomfortable about Matthew. However, he chose to put his feelings aside because his daughter seemed genuinely happy. Eventually, Matthew became a part of the family. However, during a night out at Lauren's parents' house, he revealed a shocking secret. He had been in a failed marriage before he dated Lauren, but refused to share any other details. This confession raised concerns about his honesty and intentions, especially given his young age at the time of the divorce and the fact that he had kept it from Lauren for months. Lauren's family were particularly concerned, and they noticed his body language seemed suspicious. Despite their reservations, Lauren's love for Matthew remained unwavering, and her family chose to support the couple as they continued their relationship. Matthew and Lauren eventually got engaged in 2015. The engagement party left a lasting impression on family and friends. Matthew's mother had a strained relationship with Lauren, which was evident when she wore a white dress to the wedding to show her disapproval. Despite this, the event was a success and the couple married the following year. The couple were avid Star Wars fans, and they incorporated this theme into their wedding. With their love for each other and their new life together, Lauren and Matthew seemed to be very happy. For Lauren, married life exceeded her expectations. She had her own home, a fulfilling job, and a loving husband who made her smile every day. However, the dream marriage soon turned into an ugly reality when Matthew began to show his true colors. Just a few months after their marriage, Matthew had difficulty finding a job, and when he did find one, he quickly left without much explanation. During his unemployment, Matthew spent most of his time playing video games. Meanwhile, Lauren worked multiple jobs to support the family. This created significant financial stress, which was exacerbated by Matthew's overspending on expensive electronics and gaming equipment. Lauren had saved about $10,000, but Matthew spent it all very quickly, spending $1,200 on iTunes and Xbox subscriptions alone. He even stole money from Lauren's purse if she refused to pay for his lavish lifestyle. Lauren had a decent amount of savings in her bank account before she married Matthew. However, by the time she died, there was only $1,000 left. In addition to Matthew's spending habits, there were other problems in the relationship. Lauren also had problems with Matthew's family. During a visit to his family home 6 months after the wedding, his mother was cold to Lauren and the couple argued the entire time. As a result, Lauren felt unwelcome and isolated. The disagreements mainly revolved around Matthew's spending habits, which hindered their ability to pursue their shared goals and dreams. As mentioned earlier, the couple was very fond of Star Wars and were trying to save money to take a trip to Disney World. However, Matthew would spend the little money they had saved on his own selfish habits. And Lauren suspected that Matthew was having an affair with their neighbor, with whom he frequently socialized. One evening, while Lauren was cooking dinner and talking to her sister Beth on the phone, Matthew came home from work, but instead of going with Lauren, he went out with his neighbor. He then sent Lauren a text saying he was having a great time eating with his neighbors and told her to go out to dinner alone, which further raised her suspicions. Although Matthew spent a lot of time with their neighbor, he was extremely possessive of Lauren. His possessiveness led to frequent arguments over a man at church whom Matthew suspected of flirting with Lauren. Matthew's suspicions of Lauren only increased the distance between them. He often used his past experience of being dumped by his ex-wife, who had met another man on a mission trip, to justify his insecurities. However, this justification did nothing to help their relationship, which was deteriorating. Lauren had confided in loved ones about her desire to leave Matthew less than a year after they were married because of his controlling nature. However, driven by her faith, Lauren was determined to make their marriage work and put thoughts of divorce aside. As a result, she continued to project a vision of a perfect marriage on social media, posting pictures and videos of the couple with affectionate captions that were in stark contrast to the reality of their troubled marriage. Matthew decided to return to college to become a pastor, hoping that this would save his marriage. However, his wife Lauren was not impressed and was fed up with his thoughtless and immature behavior. Lauren eventually decided to leave Matthew. But she would never get the chance to carry out that decision. Instead, she was brutally murdered by her husband in their bed. The investigation quickly pieced together the events. The crime scene appeared to be staged. The knife and cough syrup were carefully placed, and Matthew had only a small amount of blood on him, mostly on his shoes and a few drops on his shirt. This contrasted with the brutal nature of the crime, in which Lauren had been stabbed 123 times. The lack of blood splatter suggested that Matthew had washed himself, which disproved his claim that he was in a delusional state at the time of the murder. Traces of blood were found throughout the apartment after a luminol test, suggesting it had been cleaned up before police arrived. Matthew was notably expressionless when police encountered him at the scene of the crime. Cough syrup manufacturer Bayer later issued a statement denying any link between the syrup and the violent behavior. A medical examination found that the amount of the drug in Matthew's system at the time of the murder was minimal, making it unlikely to have influenced his actions. Despite this, Matthew maintained that the cough syrup was the cause, prompting police to continue searching for further evidence. The investigation into Matthew's motives led police to his diary, in which he detailed his relationship problems with Lauren, expressing low self-esteem and insecurity due to feeling unwelcome by her family. Despite Lauren's best efforts, Matthew never felt like he fit in well with her family. The neighbor Lauren suspected was related to Matthew, told police that they were just friends and had grown close through conversations about anxiety and depression. She also shared that, as they spent more time together, Matthew began discussing darker topics such as suicide and death, perhaps planning to take the licensed gun he knew she had in the house. Further investigation of Matthew's phone revealed a suspicious online search history. The searches included queries about the intoxicating effects of cough syrup, such as its ability to cause a foggy feeling and whether other people had ever been high. These searches alone suggested that Matthew may have planned the crime in advance and considered using cough syrup as a defense strategy. While this evidence was circumstantial and not enough to build a solid case, the discovery of a secret Instagram account at Marty_Radical, where Matthew posted dark content inspired by a movie, provided another important piece of evidence. Evidence showed that Matthew had a fascination with serial killers. This was evident in his portrayal of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho and his apparent interest in understanding what it was like to take another person's life, which he shared with a friend. Before killing Lauren, Matthew posted a photo on Instagram with the statement, "Everyone thinks I'm a serial killer," and the hashtag, "Found an angel to kill." His Instagram account frequently referenced demons and evil. When the trial began, prosecutors felt they had enough evidence to prove that Matthew had intentionally killed Lauren. However, the defense argued that this action was out of character for Matthew and attributed his behavior to his unstable and depressed mental state at the time. To support this claim, they presented several letters from Matthew's co-workers to the judge, asserting that this was out of character for Matthew. The prosecution called Matthew's ex-wife to testify, contesting his earlier claims that she had cheated on him. Instead, she claimed that Matthew had been unfaithful throughout their marriage. Their marriage, which suffered from similar problems to his marriage to Lauren, included his refusal to work, overspending, and not contributing to their shared goals. These problems eventually led to their separation. Matthew ultimately accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, a felony punishable by death or life in prison without parole, to avoid the death penalty. When asked to confirm his understanding of the plea, Matthew replied, "Yes, sir." He also admitted to stabbing his wife, Lauren Hugelmeyer, multiple times. On October 5, 2018, the case against Matthew Phelps came to an end when he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At his sentencing, Matthew addressed Lauren's family and apologized, saying that he deeply regretted taking Lauren's life, which he admitted had deeply affected many people. Lauren's family did not accept Matthew's apology, finding it hollow and insincere. In response, a family member expressed anger and hatred towards Matthew, stating that they could never forgive him for his insensitive actions. To this day, Lauren's family still feels guilty for not intervening when they knew the relationship had taken a turn for the worse. To help others like their beloved Lauren, they founded an organization called Lauren's Light, which raises awareness about abusive relationships and domestic violence. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The city of Claremont is currently facing a crisis due to a serial killer targeting women, causing fear even among local street dogs. A man, around 50 years old and noticeably out of shape, entered the courtroom. After a long time, one trait remained unchanged: his ability to conceal his emotions. His name is Bradley Robert Edwards, and yet, people preferred his newspaper nickname much more: the Killer from Claremont.
Edwards is a wealthy suburb of Perth, the capital of Western Australia. The community lived in fear after at least 3 girls vanished without a trace. In response to these disappearances, Edwards faced a 7-month trial in 2012. The trial included around 240 witnesses and analyzed over 1,000 pieces of evidence. According to the Australian justice system, this investigation was one of the most complex, extensive, costly, and protracted in the country's history. It not only revealed the horrific crimes committed against the victims, but also shed light on the background of the Claremont killer, which contributed to his twisted behavior. Bradley Robert Edwards was born on December 7, 1968, in Australia. Little is known about his childhood, but some sources indicate that he attended elementary school in a town called Nungdale during the 1970s. After that, he went to high school and later worked for a communications company until 2016. Edwards also served as a timekeeper for a company that organized children's track and field events. He was often considered strange by those around him, as he openly discussed his unusual fantasies. There were also rumors that he stole women's underwear from dryers in nearby houses. Even while living with his parents, some teenagers claimed he had a collection of women's underwear at home. As time went on, Edwards developed an interest in wearing women's clothing, identifying as heterosexual. This may have been a fetish that led to a series of criminal and inappropriate actions towards girls. In February 1988, when he was just over 19 years old, he committed his first known attack. The victim was an 18-year-old girl who was sleeping in her parents' house. She had only a slight acquaintance with Edwards, as their previous interactions had not been very close. In fact, she was the sister of a young man who had attended high school with Edwards. The girl woke up in the middle of the night and immediately sensed someone sitting next to her. At first, she thought it might be the guy she had celebrated All Saints' Day with just a few hours earlier. However, she quickly realized that was not the case. Before she could make a sound, Edwards covered her mouth with his hand. The girl hurried to calm the intruder. She thinks that the person who broke into her room was her boyfriend. It seemed that he covered her mouth only so that she would not scream in fear and thus not wake up her parents. Unfortunately, she was mistaken. Edwards pulled her head back and attempted to cover her face with a rag. In that moment, the girl told him that she loved him, which momentarily startled Edwards. The girl reached out to touch the face of the person lying next to her, only to be slapped by him. It was at that moment she realized the person was not her boyfriend, but an intruder. In a panic, she fought back, scratching Edwards' skin, which caused him to pull away. He quickly got off the bed and stood near the entrance of the room, wearing only a shirt. Realizing she was in danger, the girl began banging on the wall and screaming for her parents to wake up and help her. Fortunately, her cries frightened Edwards, and he fled, leaving behind a shirt that resembled a kimono and some evidence of his presence. This evidence became crucial in a major investigation that followed. Years later, Edwards's life had changed significantly. He met a girl by chance at a music festival in northern Western Australia. After their meeting, she ended her strong relationship with her boyfriend to be with Edwards, and eventually, Edwards moved in with her. The girl, whose name is not revealed, described her and Edwards's life as typical and rural. They owned several dogs and 1 horse. Each day, Edwards would drive her to work in his van before starting his own job. Occasionally, they would visit friends at a nearby farm for dinner or a barbecue. Overall, their life was unremarkable. As time passed, they began to consider marriage, with Edwards being just 22 years old at the time. It seemed that the idea of marriage was mostly pushed by his girlfriend, while he did not express much eagerness to take that step. One day, she started asking him questions about his intentions regarding marriage, which unhappy him. The following day, While working on a telephone connection at a local hospital, Edwards attacked a social worker. He approached her from behind and dragged her into a restroom. The victim fought back and managed to push him away. After that, he seemed to snap back to reality, standing next to her with a vacant stare. Although the victim escaped, the psychological impact of the attack had a lasting effect on her life. Later, after recognizing the attacker as an employee of a local telecommunications company, she reported him to his superiors. Surprisingly, instead of being fired, Edwards was promoted. Although this promotion occurred sometime later, it was clear that Edwards' employer supported him. His boss described him as a good worker who likely lost his temper due to personal issues. Edwards admitted his wrongdoing and promised to seek professional help. However, he was still convicted, though the charge was only for simple assault, which the victim strongly opposed. Until February 1995, Edwards' assaults did not appear to involve sexual violence. They mostly consisted of physical aggression and did not result in serious consequences, but they still affected the victims' lives. Meanwhile, his relationship with his common-law wife deteriorated over time. This likely happened because he chose to spend his free time on the computer instead of with her. According to her, Edwards eventually became emotionally distant, leading to the end of their cohabitation and relationship. On the morning of February 12, Edwards committed another attack. This time, he kidnapped a 17-year-old woman who was walking in one of the parks in Claremont. Reports indicate that the victim had just left a nightclub and was heading to her friend's house when she entered a poorly lit path leading to park. Edwards grabbed her from behind and forced her into his work van. He told her to be quiet, but at times, it seemed she was too terrified to move. As he put her in the van, he covered her head with a canvas bag and tied her ankles with makeshift handcuffs before driving toward the cemetery. There, he acted out his violent fantasies. During this ordeal, the girl was so shocked that she couldn't make a sound. She was in disbelief that this was happening to her. When it was over, Edwards discarded her in the bushes and calmly left the scene. Once she realized he was gone, the victim opened her eyes and rushed to the nearest hospital for help. Almost a year later, on January 27, 1996, an 18-year-old secretary named Sarah Spears also went missing. She disappeared from a similar area after leaving a nightclub around 2:00 a.m. 6 minutes later, she attempted to call a taxi from a phone booth. Although Sarah lived in the south of Perth with her older sister, she gave a different address when calling for the taxi. By the time the car arrived, she was nowhere to be found, or possibly because the driver did not see her in the dark. Witnesses reported hearing loud screams on the night Sarah went missing in the area where she could have been. They also noted seeing an unusual van parked nearby, but no significant leads were found. Sarah grew up in rural Western Australia, where her father, Don, worked primarily as a sheep shearer, a common occupation in the area. Sarah attended a boarding school in Perth and later took secretarial courses, eventually securing a job at a consulting company. Before her disappearance, she lived with her older sister, and they shared a close bond. Her family described her as cautious, which made it surprising that she chose to leave the nightclub alone. Around the same time Sarah disappeared, Edwards' relationship with his girlfriend was on the verge of ending. She had started seeing another man and may have even fallen in love with him. Initially, they were just friends and spent time together occasionally, but their relationship quickly evolved, prompting Edwards and his girlfriend to break up. They had shared responsibilities, including pets, a mortgage, and a car loan. A few months after their separation, Edwards' ex-girlfriend called to inform him that she was pregnant. It's unclear how he felt about this news, as he did not express any visible emotions. On June 9, 1996, Another victim of Edwards went missing. This occurred around the time he learned that his ex-girlfriend was pregnant. The missing person was a 20-year-old nanny named Jane Rimmer. Before her disappearance, Jane had been out with friends, starting at a hotel called The Beach, then moving to the Hotel Continental, and finally heading to a nightclub. However, when they arrived at the nightclub, there was a long line at the entrance. Jane's friends decided to leave and called a taxi to go home, but she wanted to stay. The last known footage of Jane was captured by surveillance cameras at the Hotel Continental, where she was seen talking for several minutes to a dark-haired man who was facing away from the camera. Jane lived in an apartment in the western suburbs of Perth. Her mother reported that Jane had planned to have lunch with her the next day. According to her mother, it was unusual for Jane to miss such plans, especially since she typically came over to do her laundry around that time, which was part of her routine. Jane's relatives spoke with the police, described her as a cheerful, sociable, and friendly person. They mentioned that she enjoyed surfing and frequently visited the beach. Jane also loved children, which may explain why she took a job at a childcare services company after finishing school. Following her disappearance, police searched her home for clues, but they found nothing significant. After some time, local authorities established a special task force called the Macro Police to investigate two cases simultaneously. The first case involved the mysterious disappearance of Sarah on August 3, 1996. More than 50 days after Jane went missing, her remains were discovered by local citizens who were picking wildflowers about 40 kilometers from where she was believed to have been abducted. The remains were only partially covered by branches, likely torn from a nearby tree. Reports indicate that Jane had a neck wound and several superficial injuries on her wrists. At this time, Sarah was still reported missing. In the early morning of March 15, 1997, a 27-year-old lawyer named Kiara Glennon also disappeared. The day before her disappearance, she had been on vacation with friends at the Continental Hotel, but chose to return home earlier than the others. 3 men near the bus stop reported seeing Kiara around 12:30 a.m. They noticed her walking south along the Steer Highway while talking to a man driving in a car beside her. Just weeks earlier, Sierra had celebrated her 27th birthday after returning from a year-long trip around the world. Back in Australia, she stayed at her family's home. Kiara was born in Zambia, but her parents, of Irish descent, moved to Perth when she was young. She studied ballet passionately until adulthood. In 1992, she graduated from the University of Western Australia with degrees in law and Japanese language. Soon after, she completed an internship at a large law firm and continued working there until her departure. Relatives and friends of Kiara described her as an energetic, resourceful, persistent, and strong-willed girl, highlighting her wonderful sense of humor. After she went missing, law enforcement agencies began to suspect the involvement of a serial killer. The Western Australian state government offered a $250,000 reward for information leading to the identification of the criminal, marking it as the largest reward ever offered in the country. Meanwhile, detectives searched Ciara's room for evidence, but most items were related to her sister's upcoming wedding. 19 days after Kiara's disappearance, on April 3, 1997, her body was found by accident in a park, located several kilometers from where she was believed to have been abducted. Similar to Jane, Ciara had a knife wound in her neck, and her body was partially covered with branches. Notably, the murders of Jane and Ciara occurred while Edwards was with his future partner, a woman with a 3-year-old daughter. He met she in April 1997 when he went to her workplace to fix lightning-damaged wiring. Edwards surprised everyone by admitting his love for his new girlfriend within just a month of their first meeting. Since that time, their relationship has been progressing quickly. In a home video that was later obtained by the authorities, Edwards appeared joyful as he played tennis with her young stepdaughter, he offering little girl helpful advice during the game. Furthermore, it was reported that he frequently organized picnics in parks, hosted guests, and lived an otherwise normal life. According to Edwards' new partner, perhaps the infidelity of his previous partner had hurt his feelings greatly. The police focused their investigation on taxi drivers for a few reasons. First, the victims were last seen trying to use taxi services, which led authorities to this theory. Second, some witnesses reported seeing a car near the locations where the abductions took place, suggesting a possible connection. Despite conducting extensive DNA and fingerprint tests on numerous taxi drivers, these efforts did not yield any results. By April of the following year, investigators identified a main suspect, a 40-year-old civil servant named Lance Williams, who was frequently seen driving in the area of the abductions. However, after a lengthy period of surveillance and questioning by police, Lance never confessed to involvement in any of the cases. By 2008, after numerous interrogations, authorities concluded that he was no longer a suspect. One person initially considered a suspect was Bradley Murdoch, but he was later ruled out. Interestingly, at the height of the investigation, a special task force of over 100 police officers from different departments was involved. Despite their numbers, the task force did not achieve significant results and was nearly completely disbanded. Following this, the department focused on investigating serious crimes took over the case. The first significant breakthrough came in 2009 when a DNA match was found. Forensic officer George Payton and senior researcher Lowry Webb managed to extract DNA from the decomposed remains of Ciara and sent it to the UK for testing. Although similar tests had been done in Australia and New Zealand before, they had not yielded any noteworthy findings. Police officers continued to search for clues. In one UK laboratory, a special testing technique was used. This technique not available in Australia, it could obtain results from even the smallest tissue samples. Later, specialists in Australia compared the DNA obtained from the samples to their database. They found a match with the DNA of a person who had committed crimes against a 17-year-old girl in a city cemetery in 1995. This finding led authorities to conclude that all these crimes were committed by the same individual. However, the understanding of the crime in Western Australia only evolved in 2015, when police confirmed the connections between the cemetery crime, the murder of Jane, Ciara, and an attack on an 18-year-old in his own room in 1988. It's important to note that during this earlier crime, Edwards accidentally left behind a nightgown containing his biological material. In the early morning of December 22, 2016, officers from the Western Australia State Police Tactical Response Unit entered the home of Edwards and took him. When they handcuffed him, his first reaction was, "What the hell is going on here?" The officers quickly informed him that he was a suspect in the Claremont serial killer case. In disbelief, he responded, "You've got to be kidding." As they read him his rights, he expressed confusion about why they thought he was connected to the case. Indeed, up to this point, Edwards had led a rather quiet and calm life. His social media profiles indicated that he and his common-law wife had been active volunteers, and he had even received an award from the city for his community service. He had crafted an image of a normal person, but whether he really was one is another question. The next day, Edwards was taken into custody. Formal charges were brought against him. Some of these charges included aggravated murder, kidnapping, indecent exposure, and sexual assault. Meanwhile, police began a thorough search of the house where Edwards had lived for several years. The evidence found in the garage was so disturbing that much of it could not be presented in a public trial. This evidence included various illegal pornographic materials, homemade sex toys, bags containing his genetic material secured with hair ties, and a large collection of women's underwear with openings for male genitalia. One notable discovery was a series of documents or stories. The first was titled The Story of Chloe, the second was Sophie, and the third was Nicole. All these stories shared a common theme: a man kidnapped victims. It was unclear whether he had written the stories himself or downloaded them from the internet. In late October 2019, Edwards pleaded guilty to 5 out of the 8 charges against him. Meanwhile, Edwards denied the murder charge, claiming he had no involvement in the crimes. The main trial, led by Chief Justice Stephen Hall, began on November 25, 2019, at the prosecution's request. It was conducted without a jury due to significant public interest and the abundance of unique evidence. Approximately 240 witnesses testified during the trial, which lasted for 7 months. Throughout this time, Edwards chose to remain silent and did not provide any comments. He also declined to undergo a psychiatric evaluation that could have shed light on his motivations for committing such horrific acts. One of the key pieces of evidence came from the fabric fibers found on the victims' bodies during a thorough police investigation. A total of 98 fibers were collected, most of which matched the polypropylene fibers from the work uniform of Edwards. This uniform was custom-made for the company where he was employed, indicating that it couldn't have been purchased at a local store. Additionally, polypropylene fibers were discovered in Kiara's hair, and their composition and color perfectly matched the carpet in Edwards's work vehicle. He worked as a technician at a local telecommunications company, which meant he frequently drove a company car, a Holden Commodore executive station wagon with the Telstra company logo. He used this vehicle even outside of work hours. Witnesses, including a security guard from the cemetery, reported seeing this van parked near the cemetery without any apparent reason, this confirming it was the same car used by Edwards to abduct girls. Before that, the authorities were able to narrow down their list of suspects and track down the wanted criminal thanks to a relatively rare car. They might have made progress sooner, but they lacked crucial evidence, such as suspects' DNA. By September 2020, Edwards was convicted of the murders of Jane and Sierra, but he was found not guilty of the murder of Sarah Spears, resulting in no conviction for Sarah case. The sentencing was initially scheduled for December of the same year. Around that time, a woman who had been attacked in her bedroom in 1988 testified in court. She explained that she didn't see herself as a victim because she had survived the attack. However, she shared that since then, she has felt a constant fear every night, especially before going to bed, worrying that someone might attack her while she sleeps. The woman testified in court that she had been experiencing seizures, panic attacks, and sudden anxiety for a long time, and her mental health continued to decline. Another victim, who was kidnapped by Edwards and assaulted in a cemetery, stated that he robbed her of her youth. She found it difficult to articulate the profound effects this horrific experience had on her life. A third victim, who was assaulted in a city hospital, learned about Edwards' arrest when law enforcement contacted her. They informed her that the man who attacked her was a serial killer, which left her in shock. However, unlike many other victims, she was able to speak publicly about her experience and even wrote a book about it. Edwards' first common law wife's partner also commented on the arrest, but he chose to remain anonymous. He expressed doubts about being the father of his daughter due to the recent events. Edwards' second partner testified in court. She revealed that she began to question Edwards' honesty in the early 2000s. This prompted her to check his bank accounts, where she found that he was withdrawing between $300 and $400 every few days. She noted that she and Edwards lived modestly and often faced financial struggles. Meanwhile, Edwards's relatives defended him vigorously. His nephew, Adam Edwards, portrayed him as a generous, straightforward, and approachable person, insisting that he could not possibly be a serial killer. On December 23, 2020, Bradley Robert Edwards was sentenced to life in prison with a 40-year probation period. This sentence was unprecedented and marked the longest in Western Australia's history. When Supreme Court Justice Stephen Hall announced the verdict, applause erupted in the courtroom. The judge noted that although there were aggravating factors for each crime, there was not enough evidence to prove that Edwards posed a continuous threat to others. Interestingly, Edwards's legal team had until February 3, 2021, to appeal the decision and argue for his innocence, but they never did. The local police commissioner remarked to news agencies that the court had imprisoned one of the country's most dangerous criminals. He expressed hope that Edwards would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of release. Additionally, he mentioned that he would continue to seek justice for another victim, Sarah Spears. The case against Edwards is considered one of the most expensive and lengthy criminal trials in Western Australia. By September 2020, its total cost had surpassed $11 million. Authorities also had to spend a substantial amount on providing the legally required defense services for the accused. Significant funds were allocated for the prosecution as well. The prosecution team consisted of 4 prosecutors and 5 state lawyers. Additionally, some witnesses and experts traveled to Australia from other countries. The prosecution compiled over 150 volumes, which included reports of their work and organized evidence of Edwards' crimes. Law enforcement officers established a comprehensive database containing various documents and case materials, totaling several thousand gigabytes. Additionally, civilians took part in their own investigations, including journalist Liam Bartlett. He believes that Edwards may have had many more victims. Among them, one potential victim is a 22-year-old woman named Julie Cutler, who vanished without a trace in June 1988 after leaving a hotel. There were other girls who also disappeared under similar circumstances, but currently, there is no information available about those cases. The conclusion of the Bradley Robert Edwards case, the Claremont serial killings, left a painful mark on Western Australia's crime history. Thanks to the efforts of forensic officers, researchers in the community were instrumental in solving the case and bringing justice to the victims. Edwards, whose brutality and involvement in the murder of Jane Rimmer and Kiara Glennon, was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, there are still unfortunate victims who have not found justice. This case reminds us of the need to uphold the law and fight to prevent similar crimes in the future.
Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Melania Ray. This is the story of Melania Ray, a striking woman who was a drill instructor in the Ken Regiment at the time of the incident. She was married to Salvatore Paralisai and they had a 1-year-old daughter, Vittoria. The family lived in a small village called Oscolaquina, near the San Marco Plateau in Italy. At this time, tourists walking along the paths below the mountainside could not see the flowers that usually bloom on the plateau because the snow had only recently melted. However, a bar and small shops were open, allowing visitors to stroll and enjoy the view. The tragedy occurred on Monday, April 18, 2011, around 3 p.m. On that day, Salvatore arrived in the area with his young daughter after parking his car nearby. He entered a small bar, used the restroom, and then asked the locals if they had seen his wife, Melania. She had recently given birth and had gone missing. At the time, she was 28 years old, athletic, and had long dark hair. When Salvatore learned that no one had seen Melania, he became more anxious, pacing back and forth. He eventually broke down in tears, expressing his fear that his wife had been kidnapped. The people there decided to support him and his daughter by helping to search for Melania. They went out onto the porch and walked along the path from the parking lot to the bar, hoping to find any sign of her, but they found nothing. The Salvatore explained that earlier that morning, he had been with his wife. After lunch, they went to the plateau, where he played with his daughter near the swings in the playground. His wife had planned to step away briefly to buy coffee and use the restroom, but she did not return. Sensing that something was wrong, he began calling her numerous times over the past 15 minutes, but she didn't answer. He realized her phone was missing and suspected that she might have been kidnapped by people in a passing car. The Salvatore remained at the bar and spoke with the owner, Giovanna, but the longer he stayed, the more unusual his behavior seemed. First, Salvatore was inadequately dressed for a cool spring day. Second, he seemed to neglect his 1-year-old daughter while he grieved for his missing wife. The little girl wandered through the bar, grew hungry, and felt cold, but her father paid no attention to her needs, continuing to cry and recount his story about his wife's disappearance. At 4:34 p.m., a call came into the local police station from Giovanna, the owner of a bar. She called the emergency services because Salvatore had just left, reporting that he had not been able to find his wife for over an hour and was concerned that she might have been kidnapped. He had his young daughter, just over a year old, with him, and the father was clearly upset. When he returned to the bar, Giovanna handed him the phone to speak to the police. The shaky man gave the dispatcher some details about himself and his missing wife, Melania. He mentioned that she had a hernia, which may have worsened as they were near the mountains. He repeated the story he had shared with others, emphasizing that Melania had disappeared after going to the bar. Throughout the call, he spoke very softly, often mumbling and stuttering, and there were long pauses. Police had to ask nearly every question multiple times to get him to respond. When the police arrived, he repeated his story, explaining that Melania had health problems, so they were forced to go to the nearest hospital. They then decided to stop for a walk and coffee. While she was out, Salvatore stayed at the playground with their daughter, who was playing on the swings. When Melania did not return, he became concerned and tried calling her, but she did not answer. This was unusual, as she usually answered her calls. Worried about her silence, Salvatore eventually went to the bar where she was supposed to be and began asking people there if they had seen her. As time passed without any news, Salvatore grew increasingly desperate. The police asked him detailed questions about Melania's appearance and the moments leading up to her departure. Salvatore insisted that she was fine, she had just needed to use the restroom, and there was no sign of abnormal. At the scene, the police verified Salvatore's identity and began their investigation. They first conducted a quick analysis of his phone data, looking into his recent interests and searches to evaluate his credibility. The police learned about Salvatore Paralisi, born on August 28, 1987, in the province of Naples, Italy. At the time Melania went missing, he was with their daughter in Felina. His wife, Melania Ray, was born on May 24, 1982, in another small town in the province of Naples. Since both were military personnel, the Carabinieri promptly contacted their military unit for further information. To assist Salvatore, a friend of his who was also a police officer arrived at the scene. He wanted to help Salvatore take care of Vittoria. Eventually, the police were able to gather all the necessary information and then released Salvatore and his daughter. Melania's relatives were notified of the situation shortly after. They rushed to the scene to learn more about what had happened and assist in the search for Melania. During discussions with police, Salvatore acted unusually. As a military man, he knew it was important to provide accurate information to the police to help find his wife quickly. Instead, he dodged questions and slowed down the investigation. Police had to ask him for Melania's cell phone number 3 or 4 times before he shared the information. The police wanted to track Melania's mobile phone to locate her and track her movements. There were only 3 busy walkways between the bar and the playground. One was more than 100 meters long and was mostly visible from the kiosk cameras. The second was much longer and led to the War Memorial, a destination that often has a lot of people passing by. The third walkway, 150 meters long, was also closely monitored by cameras. Surprisingly, however, nothing was seen. The cameras did not record any footage of Melania, raising doubts about whether she had been in the area that day. Data shows that Melania's cell phone was last active at 2:45 p.m., just before she went missing. The activity was near the location where she had been staying with Salvatore and Vittoria. Unfortunately, this information did not lead to any further details. The only hope for the search lay with the National Mountain Rescue Service. Experts were called in to help, bringing equipment and sniffer dogs. Dogs' sense of smell is so acute that they can follow a scent for up to 20 days after being left behind. The dog quickly oriented itself and followed the asphalt road to the monument. At that point, the trail appeared to end, suggesting that Melania may have gotten into the car and driven away. However, Salvatore later mentioned that they had been in the area just over a week ago. This leaves 2 possibilities. The dog was following Melania's old scent, or she had actually been abducted. Afterward, the police took Salvatore to the station for questioning. There, he recounted all the details of the day leading up to Melania's disappearance. According to him, she visited a physiotherapist around 11:30 a.m. They then went to a supermarket and later visited the San Marco clinic, where doctors diagnosed her with an inguinal hernia. After lunch, they returned home to change clothes before going for a walk with their daughter. Salvatore noted that they had been in the area for the past month, making Melania very familiar with the territory. Salvatore mentioned that he and Melania had gone to a bar together during their visit. After gathering all the necessary information, the police sent Salvatore home. The main theory of the police was kidnapping, based on information gathered with the help of sniffer dogs. They believed that Melania had approached the road, was abducted, and her trail suddenly ended. All the evidence suggested that she may have been forced into the car. In May, Salvatore appeared on television to share his story, revealing new details. He mentioned that he and his wife had a small picnic near the War Memorial and were relaxing there on the day she disappeared. Salvatore also described the clothes and accessories Melania was wearing when she went missing. Interestingly, he noted that she did not have her handbag with her personal belongings at that time. She was wearing casual clothes and several gold ornaments. However, it was puzzling how a responsible woman could embark on a long trip with a child without any preparation or a handbag. She didn't even have money or cigarettes, which she usually smoked. Melania also forgot to bring a milk bottle and clothes for her daughter. Another point of confusion was how she could have gone to the bar to buy her husband coffee if she had no money. Salvatore's statements became increasingly contradictory, leading to suspicions that he might be lying. With these concerns in mind, the police decided to question Salvatore again to learn more. Salvatore claimed that they had a strong relationship and that they sometimes disagreed on various issues. But these disagreements never escalated into conflict. In general, they had a great, strong family, which was confirmed by relatives and friends. Therefore, the Salvatore was released. The next day, Melania's relatives arrived in town and stayed at a small apartment near the Salvatore home. Although exhausted from the trip, they made it a priority to visit the police station to ask about the investigation. They provided any information that could help locate Melania as quickly as possible. It was discovered that Melania had 2 phones that Salvatore did not mention. One phone was used to contact her husband and friends. The other phone was used to talk to her mother and close relatives. At 1:34 p.m. on the day Melania went missing, her mother-in-law called the second number. They had a conversation that lasted about 9 minutes, during which Melania shared details about the day. She mentioned that her family was going to San Marco to go for a walk and attend the christening of a friend's child at around 4 p.m. The call ended at 1:43 p.m., and there was no further communication. The police got no new information out of Salvatore. His testimony was largely a rehash of what they already knew. The police were puzzled by his decision to stay with the child. They questioned why Melania didn't bring Vittoria along when she went out for coffee. The trip from their house to the park took less than 20 minutes. Did Melania really need to go to the bathroom during that time? And most importantly, where did the girl go afterward? Melania's relatives moved into the Salvatore home and spoke to him regularly about the situation, but he remained quiet and sad, often avoiding their questions. Salvatore's relatives tried to support him as much as possible, helping him care for Vittoria. On April 19, 2011, the entire city learned of Melania's disappearance. This was shocking, as the suburb was known to be one of the quietest and most peaceful areas in the area. Although the police suspected Salvatore, he had no previous legal problems. Salvatore frequently appeared on various television shows, discussing the tragedy he was facing. To clarify what had happened that morning, police checked Salvatore's cell phone. They found that it had been on from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. but then turned off until 6 p.m. That same day, Salvatore drove to Plateau San Mar, where the armed forces, police, and search teams were working. However, he showed little interest in the search efforts or their progress. Instead, he returned the sweatshirt he had borrowed from Giovanna, a bar owner, on the day Melania went missing and quickly left, claiming that he had to go to work. His behavior aroused suspicion among the police. While examining Salvatore's mobile phone, the Carabinieri found something noteworthy. He had been in constant communication with a girl named Lodovica for the past month, exchanging thousands of messages and making calls almost every day. It became clear that he was having a romantic affair with her. Salvatore had fallen in love with Lodovica Pero in September 2009. And their relationship continued even at home in 2011, after Melania went missing. In the summer of 2009, Melania discovered his infidelity and was furious. At the time, she moved in with her parents and she was pregnant with their daughter. Despite this, Salvatore continued to pursue Lodovica, who was 27 at the time and working in their military unit. Eventually, for the sake of their child, Salvatore and Melania reconciled, and she returned home. However, his love affair continued. He often rented an apartment to see Lodovica. After completing her training, Lodovica was sent to Rome, but their relationship continued. Salvatore spent most of his free time talking to her on the phone. Their conversations showed that Lodovica wanted more than a long-distance relationship, but Melania's presence got in the way. In the months leading up to Melania's disappearance, there had been tension between Lodovica and Salvatore. Lodovica wanted him to be with her, and he kept delaying their time together. Melania was determined to keep their marriage intact, especially after discovering that her husband was still seeing Lodovica. She even threatened to expose his relationship with his mistress, which could have jeopardized Salvatore's job. This threat scared him, causing him to distance himself from Lodovica. Melania believed that her tactics had worked, thinking that their relationship was back to normal and that Salvatore's feelings for Lodovica were just a passing love. Melania was determined not to give in. She wanted to resume their relationship, while Lodovica was urging him to leave his family for her. He found himself caught between two women. The situation escalated to the point where, on April 19th, Salvatore traveled to Rome to meet Lodovica's parents, hoping they could start a life together. The issue was that Melania was completely unaware of this plan. At the same time, he was supposed to be spending the holidays with his family, including Melania and their daughter. just a day before this meeting. However, his wife went missing. This turn of events seemed very suspicious, as love triangles rarely have happy endings. When Salvatore returned to work after his wife went missing, management suggested a rescue operation. They suggested assembling a team of soldiers and using specialized equipment. However, Salvatore remained remarkably calm and insisted that such an operation was unnecessary. He believed that his wife had left him out of resentment, so no operations needed to be organized. Salvatore then deleted his social media accounts, which he had used to communicate with Ludovica. This led the police to discover a potential motive for the crime. By now, the crucial time to find the missing person alive had passed. The police took the situation seriously and concluded that they had no chance of finding Melania alive. The search dog used in the investigation did not detect new traces or scent of Melania. On April 23rd, police received a call from an unknown man who identified himself as a mushroom picker. He reported seeing the body of a woman 17 kilometers from Felina. Police arrived at the scene shortly after. The body was found to be Melania's. Forensic experts discovered multiple injuries on her body during the autopsy. These injuries were consistent with stab wounds caused by small knives, mainly to the head and neck. There were also injuries to her chest and some self-defense wounds. Although Melania was not raped, significant evidence was collected from the scene, including her cell phone, a bloody lighter, a water bottle, and traces of a small car. The most important piece of evidence was a grocery store receipt from the morning of April 18th. Additionally, insulin syringes were found nearby, suggesting that Melania may have been abusing drugs. However, a toxicology report confirmed that there were no traces of alcohol or illegal drugs in Melania's system. The police received information from Salvatore about an interesting coincidence. A few days before Melania went missing, she and her husband had an intimate encounter in the same area behind the kiosk where her body was later discovered. Somehow, this information reached Ludovica, who was furious, having been lied to. He had repeatedly assured Ludovica that he was no longer intimate with his wife. This revelation only added to the complexity surrounding their relationship. However, on the day of their encounter, it was snowing and very cold, making it unlikely that they would engage in intimate relations outdoors. Additionally, it was known that Melania was experiencing pain from an inguinal hernia at that time. Given these factors, the narrative of a passionate encounter at the kiosk doesn't seem reasonable. However, this is just an assumption that needs to be proven. The police conducted a thorough search of the surrounding area for any traces of blood. They discovered various pieces of evidence, including shoe prints. In order to gather more information about the suspect, it was important to determine who was in the area at the time of the victim's death. During that time, soldiers from Salvatore's and Melania's regiments were present. In fact, the soldiers accidentally left behind some evidence, such as a water bottle, a store receipt, and shoe prints. This complicating factor hindered the police investigation because much of this evidence was irrelevant to the case. Additionally, the soldiers reported that they did not see anyone suspicious that day and confirmed that no body was present. The police decided to examine Ludovica more closely. They discovered that she did not leave the barracks on April 18th to 19th, providing her with a solid alibi for the time of the crime. Ludovica also shared crucial information, stating that on April 17th, she had spoken with Salvatore about their relationship. During this conversation, Salvatore mentioned that his wife was cheating on him. It was revealed that Ludovica was not Salvatore's only affair. He had previous relationships with other soldiers and women. Although Ludovica was aware of this, she did not consider it significant. Ultimately, it was uncovered that the Salvatore had been involved with several women simultaneously. Salvatore was aware that the police had obtained this information and feared it could be seen as a motive for the murder of Melania. To gather evidence against Salvatore, Police installed a wiretap in his car and also eavesdropped on his telephone conversations. This yielded crucial information. Salvatore often talked to himself in the car about his wife's murder, raising suspicions of his involvement in Melania's death. Police obtained permission to search Salvatore's car with luminol, discovering traces of blood inside. Samples were sent to a lab, and subsequent testing confirmed the blood belonged to Melania. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's office was developing its theory to understand the motive behind the crime. They believed that Melania was a controlling person who harbored deep resentment towards her husband for his many betrayals, yet she kept him around for the sake of their child. This constant pressure worsened their situation. He sought an escape by starting a relationship with Ludovica, who also exerted pressure on him. In this relationship, he felt like a third wheel, leading him to consider getting rid of his difficult wife. Forensic experts have submitted their full report, confirming the findings of the medical examiner. They determined that Melania died between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. on April 18th, from 35 stab wounds. It is likely that the attack occurred while she was urinating, as evidenced by her squatting position and an empty bladder. The attacker probably approached her from behind and struck when she least expected it, leaving little chance for her to defend herself. The nature of the wounds indicated that the assault was particularly brutal, stemming from personal animosity. It was confirmed that Melania never reached the plateau on the day she died, based on geolocation data from her mobile phone. The prosecutor's office believed they stopped near the kiosks in the pine forest, where they allegedly engaged in sexual intercourse. This occurred around 2:30 p.m., and it was at this point that Salvatore unexpectedly attacked and killed Melania. Afterwards, he returned home, changed his clothes, took their young daughter, and went straight to San Marco, where he entered a bar and pretended to be a heartbroken husband whose wife had left him. Despite his claims of innocence, the jury found the evidence against him compelling. As a result, Salvatore Paralisi was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. He was also ordered to pay €2 million to Melania's family. Salvatore maintains his innocence and is currently serving his sentence in a reformatory in Milan. Custody of Melania's daughter was given to her family. Now 13, Vittoria has expressed her desire to change her last name to her mother's. She does not visit her father and would rather he not know about her choices. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarah Foxwell. Sarah Foxwell was born on May 18, 1998 in Salisbury, Maryland. Mary Sarah's mother had 3 children from a previous marriage. When Sarah's parents divorced, her mother had to take care of all the children by herself. Sarah always tried to keep the peace between her sisters when they argued and fought. Sarah always radiated positivity. Sarah's family decided to move in with her aunt and grandparents. As Christmas approached, Mary had to work extra shifts to buy presents for the children. Mary lived in a large farmhouse outside Salisbury. The children loved it because there was no space to play. On December 22nd, with only 3 days left until Christmas, the children were excited and playing all over the house. They ordered pizza for dinner, and around 9 p.m., everyone started getting ready for bed. Sarah shared a room with her 6-year-old sister Emma at the end of the hall near the back door. After a while of talking, they both fell asleep. The next morning, Robert Foxwell, Sarah's grandfather, woke up and went to wake the children. When he entered Sarah's room, he found only Emma sleeping. Robert thought that Sarah might have gotten up early, so he began searching the house. However, Robert could not find Sarah anywhere. Robert told Sarah's aunt, Elizabeth Foxwell, about this, and they decided to search together. After a while of searching, they realized that Sarah was no longer at home. Elizabeth thought that Sarah might have gone out to play in the snowy night, but she soon noticed that Sarah's shoes and coat were still at home. This made Elizabeth feel worried. Sarah's toothbrush was missing from its usual place in the bathroom. Elizabeth searched the area around the house with Robert, but they found no sign of Sarah. Finally, Elizabeth decided to call Sarah's mother, Mary. Mary immediately returned home, and they contacted the police to report Sarah missing. The police arrived quickly and began searching the house. Elizabeth told the police that Elizabeth always checked and locked all the doors and windows before going to bed the night before. The police began to suspect a kidnapping. They thought the kidnapper might have taken Sarah's toothbrush before leaving the house. The police went to all the windows to check. When they approached the back door near Sarah's room and tried the handle, the door opened immediately. Elizabeth confirmed that the door had been locked the night before. Elizabeth remembered that they had left a spare key near the front door, but when she went there to check, the key was gone. This further reinforced the suspicion of a kidnapping. The kidnapper had learned about their family's life. Only then did he learn about the family's spare key. And the dog in the house did not bark or make any noise on the night of the incident, although the dog would normally be very wary of strangers. Fearing that Sarah had been kidnapped, the police immediately launched a large-scale search operation. News of Sarah's disappearance quickly spread throughout the community, and many local residents contacted the police to offer help. The police chief appealed to the community through the media, asking people to check their properties for any suspicious signs. To search for Sarah, the police mobilized dozens of officers from the local police department and received support from police from neighboring towns and other states. The common goal of everyone was to find Sarah alive. Since the criminal had taken her toothbrush, this could be considered keeping her alive, so the police mobilized all resources to participate in this search. Outside the house, the police found the first traces of the kidnapper. There were fresh tire tracks in the snow, indicating that the kidnapper had used a car. Since all of Sarah's warm clothes were left at the scene, it was clear that the kidnapper could not have taken her on foot. Sarah's relatives were taken to the police station to give statements. While at the police station, Sarah's sister, Emma, revealed an important piece of information. She recalled that she had woken up on the night of the incident because she heard a man talking to Sarah. Not understanding what was going on, Emma pretended to be asleep, but she watched the man leave the room with Sarah. Emma's account also revealed that Emma recognized the man. This man was Mr. Thomas, a familiar face known to family members. Thomas Leggs, 30, was the ex-boyfriend Elizabeth. Although the couple had separated several months earlier, Thomas was also well known to the police due to his extensive criminal record. Thomas was first sentenced to prison at the age of 18 for assaulting a 12-year-old girl, serving a 4-year sentence but released early after a few months. He was then sentenced to 7 years for assaulting another girl but was released early after only 6 months. Thomas was then sentenced to 6 months for another assault. In short, Thomas had a history of abusing girls and women. After Thomas's wife returned home from the hospital with their newborn daughter, he attempted to assault another girl on the same day. His wife later divorced him and obtained a restraining order against Thomas because he had threatened to kill both her and their daughter. Another incident occurred when a woman and her young daughter moved into the street where Thomas lived. One day, the young daughter and her friends were playing in the yard. Thomas approached the two children. He said that he had been watching the two girls playing in the yard and called them wild girls. Thomas then picked up a stick and began to hit the two children on the buttocks. The girl ran inside and told her mother what had happened. The mother saw Thomas through the window and realized that she had seen his face before moving into the house. She checked the sex offender registry in the area and had a photo of Thomas. The mother identified Thomas as the attacker. She reported Thomas to the police, but although the case went to court, he avoided any punishment for his actions. Before the trial began, The woman was asked not to mention that Thomas had been convicted of sexual assault and was on the sex offenders register, as it could lead to an unfair verdict for Thomas. In another incident, just months before Sarah's disappearance, Thomas was arrested for suspicious behavior. He had sneaked into a 24-year-old woman's bedroom in the middle of the night, undressed, and masturbated next to her bed. After his arrest, Thomas was released on bail. Initially, he successfully kept his criminal record from Sarah's aunt, Elizabeth, but she eventually found out. However, Thomas was able to convince Elizabeth that all the accusations were false. The police suspected that Thomas was behind Sarah's abduction for the following reasons. Sarah's relatives also said that while Thomas was dating Elizabeth, he spent significantly more time with Sarah than with the other children in the family. This was not considered suspicious at the time, but after Sarah went missing, it became concerning. The police wanted to question Thomas. So they went to his house, where they took him in for questioning and also obtained a search warrant for the shed. Inside the shed, the police found messy and appalling living conditions, but did not find any evidence linking them to Sarah's disappearance. Police discovered a large collection of adult magazines and DVDs in Thomas's storage room. During questioning, Thomas repeatedly denied any involvement in Sarah's disappearance. Thomas said he tried to avoid being alone with children while dating Elizabeth. When asked about Emma seeing him on the night of the abduction, Thomas claimed that Emma often made up stories and that he was not there. Thomas showed a lack of seriousness when it came to Sarah's disappearance, constantly smiling, mocking the sheriff during questioning. Thomas also claimed that he had an alibi, saying that he had been at the bar with his friends until late at night. Police quickly investigated Thomas's alibi. Had someone who had seen him at the bar. However, he left the bar around 1 a.m. and did not reappear until around 7 a.m. When police checked Thomas's phone, they discovered that he had texted several women that night asking them out on dates, all of whom he rejected. Although the search for Sarah was difficult, one reason the police continued to search was the hope that Sarah was still alive. So when the police searched Thomas's pickup truck, they found Sarah's green toothbrush and a large stick of gum. The police believed that Thomas may have used the stick of gum to get Sarah into his car. The tire tracks on Thomas's car matched the tire tracks left in the snow in front of Sarah's house the night she went missing. When police questioned Thomas about this, he claimed that he had not been to the house in over a month. In order to search for Sarah, hundreds of police officers and volunteers worked together to search a large area around Sarah's house. They searched through abandoned buildings, forests, ravines, and bodies of water. A canine unit with search dogs was also mobilized to help track Sarah's scent. In response to that information, helicopters provided aerial observation so as not to miss any areas. Many people came to the police station and volunteered to join the search. Because of bad weather and the approaching holiday, the search that day did not bring the desired results. However, no one was discouraged, and the search continued early the next morning. During the search, the number of volunteers did not decrease but increased significantly. In total, 3,000 people participated in the search. Meanwhile, the police collected more evidence implicating Thomas in the kidnapping. Immediately after bringing Thomas to the police station, he was given a new set of clothes and his clothes were sent to the laboratory. Experts discovered strange DNA on Thomas's underwear and compared it with Sarah's DNA sample taken from her belongings. The results showed that the two DNA samples were a perfect match. Based on the discovery of DNA on Thomas's clothes, the police came to a conclusion. Thomas likely sexually assaulted Sarah after kidnapping her. On the second day of the search, there were still no results, and on Christmas morning, thousands of people continued to search for Sarah. Even though it was a holiday, no one gave up. Police focused their search on an area near the state line, about 8 miles from Sarah Elizabeth's aunt's house. The area was heavily wooded, prompting hundreds of people to search thoroughly in hopes of finding Sarah alive. However, the actual results were tragic. At around 4 p.m., police discovered Sarah's body lying on the ground near the state line. When medical experts began an autopsy, they determined that Sarah had been sexually assaulted and had signs of strangulation. Notably, experts found soil in Sarah's lungs, suggesting that her killer had attempted to drown her during the torture. After the attack, Sarah suffered severe burns. Police believe her attacker left her in the woods for some time, went to get gasoline, and returned to light her on fire. Finding smoke in Sarah's lungs suggested that Sarah was still alive at the time. The brutality of the case shocked the police, Sarah's family, and those involved in the search for her. After Sarah's body was discovered, forensic experts found some of the girl's hair and pieces of fabric from her pajamas in Thomas's pickup truck. New evidence of Thomas's involvement in the kidnapping was introduced, along with other evidence, but the trial was delayed for more than a year. In early 2011, the prosecution decided to offer Thomas a plea deal. Under the deal, Thomas would admit his guilt and receive a life sentence instead of the death penalty. Thomas eventually agreed to cooperate and tell the police everything. Thomas admitted to luring Sarah away from her home, then taking her away, sexually assaulting her, and killing her. Thomas was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and was transferred to a maximum security prison. During his first days there, another inmate attacked Thomas with a homemade weapon during lunchtime, causing several serious cuts. Thomas survived, and prison staff took extra protective measures to prevent other inmates from harming Thomas. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mindy Morgenstern. Mindy Morgenstern was born on April 29, 1984, in Bogota, Colombia. She and her sister were adopted by Eunice and Larry Morgenstern, farmers from New Salem, North Dakota, USA. The couple already had a biological daughter named Rebecca, but they wanted a larger family. They adopted a boy named Michael and later a girl from Colombia named April. When they found out April had a younger sister, Mindy, they decided to adopt her as well. This completed their family of 4 children, with 3 being adopted. Mindy was the youngest. Growing up on the farm suited Mindy perfectly. She enjoyed horseback riding and playing basketball. She assisted her parents with farm work and was even skilled enough to drive a tractor. After high school, Mindy relocated to Valley City and became in college life. Her outgoing and cheerful personality helped her make friends quickly. She balanced her studies with a part-time job as a waitress at a local restaurant. Her future had looked promising, but now her plans and dreams were shattered. Mindy's friends, Tony Ballman and Danielle Holmstrom, became concerned when she failed to answer her cell phone and didn't return their calls on September 13, 2006. They decided to visit her apartment to check on her. Upon arrival, they noticed Mindy's car parked in a lot, and Tony went up to the second floor to knock on her door. When no one answered, Tony entered the unlocked apartment and found it dark in the house. After taking a few steps, she stumbled upon something on the floor. Turning on the light revealed the lifeless body of Mindy, with visible injuries on her neck. Tony was shocked and immediately ran outside to call Danielle, who was waiting in the car. The two of them re-entered the apartment, confused and trying to make sense of what they saw. Mindy's body showed signs of knife wounds on her neck, and an empty bottle of cleaning agent lay nearby. The strong smell of the cleaning agent filled the entire apartment. Danielle quickly called 911 to report the discovery of her friend's body. Hearing the noise, a neighbor living on the same floor decided to come check out what was happening. He walked up to Mindy, he checked for a pulse and, after a few moments, confirmed to Tony and Danielle that their friend was deceased. Soon after, the police arrived at Mindy's apartment and were immediately hit with the strong smell of cleaning agent. Upon entering, they found Mindy's body lying across the living room floor with a belt wrapped around her neck and a broken knife lodged in it. The handle of the knife was lying next to her. It was clear that the perpetrator had attempted to destroy evidence using the cleaning agent, but fortunately, some evidence remained. Forensic experts discovered skin particles under Mindy's left-hand fingernails, indicating that she had resisted and scratched her attacker. As investigators worked to determine the motive behind the attack, they quickly ruled out a robbery gone. Mindy's purse, phone, wallet, and cash were still clutched in her right hand, and her jewelry and other valuables were untouched. The scene suggested that Mindy had been attacked the moment she entered her apartment with a basket of clean laundry, which was found next to her body. There were no signs of forced entry on the front door. This suggests that the person who attacked Mindy may have known her, or they may have entered the apartment immediately after her. The following day, detectives faced the difficult task of informing Mindy's family of her passing. Her parents, brother, and sisters were devastated by the news. The family couldn't think of anyone who would want to harm Mindy, as she was well liked by everyone. Furthermore, none of her friends had any problems with the law. Tony and Danielle, friends of Mindy, told investigators that they were not the only people in the apartment. A neighbor from the same floor had entered Mindy's apartment after hearing their screams, checked her pulse, and confirmed that she was deceased. When questioned, the man claimed he had checked Mindy's pulse with the back of his hand to avoid leaving fingerprints on her wrist. Which investigators found suspicious. This man's name is Robert Lind, and he had several scratches on his hands, making him a suspect. The police took Robert to the station for questioning. However, after reviewing his background and discovering his history of run-ins with the law, the number of questions increased. The police asked about the scratches on his hands, which he claimed were work-related injuries, explaining that his job working with steel often resulted in such scratches. When questioned about his activities on the day of the incident, Robert reported being at work from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Robert's boss verified this information and added that employees working in the same industry as Robert often have scratches on their hands due to the nature of their work. Despite his alibi, investigators did not clear Robert as a suspect and requested he a DNA sample, which he agreed to provide. The sample was sent to the lab for comparison with DNA found under Mindy's fingernails. The police interviewed Mindy's friends but found no leads. Everyone reported that Mindy had no conflicts with anyone. While waiting for DNA results, investigators spoke with other neighbors, including Mo Gibbs, a corrections officer from the Barnes County Jail. Mo lived in the same building as Mindy and was familiar with the investigators, so they hoped he might have noticed something unusual. As a corrections officer, Mo was likely more observant than the average person. He was married with a stepchild and lived in the apartment next door to Mindy. When he came to the police station for questioning, he brought his child, so one of the police kept the child, while Mo answered questions. Mo reported serving in the Navy from 1990 to 1999. He was discharged after being convicted of assault, for which he served a prison sentence. Following his release, he had no further run-ins with the law. Before becoming a corrections officer, Mo worked as a college security guard. On the day before Mindy's death, Mo claimed to have worked a night shift. The next morning, he returned home and began loading boxes into his car in preparation for moving to a new apartment with his wife and stepdaughter. Mo stated that he didn't notice anything unusual, but he did notice a strong smell of cleaning agent. However, he didn't investigate the source of the smell due to being preoccupied with the move. Mo had scratches on his hands, which he attributed to injuring himself while carrying boxes. When questioned by police about whether he had ever been to Mindy's apartment, Mo replied that he had visited once to help Mindy carry a laundry basket. Investigators requested a DNA sample from Mo for comparison, and he agreed without hesitation. After providing the sample, he was allowed to leave. Investigators sought to speak with anyone who had a close relationship with Mindy. To do this, they visited the restaurant where she was employed and conducted interviews with her co-workers. During these conversations, they discovered that a particular individual had been making Mindy feel uneasy. This person, a regular at the restaurant, resided in a nearby trailer and frequently visited the establishment. His behavior was described as peculiar, and Mindy had expressed discomfort when he was around. The man in question was identified as Ralph. When questioned by the police, he denied any involvement in Mindy's death, claiming he had no knowledge of who she was. According to Ralph, he had never had any disputes with anyone at the restaurant. Although Ralph did not have an alibi, he willingly provided a DNA sample. The police then sent this sample to a laboratory for comparative analysis. Next, investigators spoke with Jordan Rand, Mindy's boyfriend of over a year. He and Mindy shared a similar background, both coming from local farming families, and had met at church. Jordan had a clean record and a good reputation in town. He appeared dedicated to Mindy, often taking her to his family's home to spend time together. However, Mindy's parents reported that Jordan would sometimes arrive unannounced at their farm, asking to see Mindy. They sensed he might be jealous, but didn't think he was capable of harming their daughter. Jordan went to the police station immediately after being asked to do so. He was cooperative and honest in his responses to the investigators' questions. According to Jordan, he had spent time with Mindy the day before her death, going shopping and visiting a video rental store together. The next day, Mindy called him at 10:45 a.m., which turned out to be the day of her death. What struck Jordan as unusual was that this was the only call they exchanged that day. Normally, Mindy would call him about 10 times a day, but on that day, there was only that one call, and when he tried to reach her later, she didn't answer. Jordan assumed she was busy and would call him back, but unfortunately, that never happened. Jordan also provided details about his activities at the time of Mindy's death, stating that he was working on his family's farm. The investigators requested a DNA sample and asked him to undergo a polygraph test, to which he agreed. However, during the polygraph test, Jordan was very nervous, so the test results were unclear. Despite this, the police released him, sent his DNA sample for analysis, and began verifying his alibi. Kyle Kia, Mindy's ex-boyfriend, who was also a potential suspect. They had broken up over a year before her death, but something unusual occurred after the breakup. Kyle met Mindy when she was a freshman. They dated for 2.5 years, during which time Kyle regularly visited Mindy's family farm. Her family adored him and treated him like one of their own. Mindy loved Kyle deeply and thought they would eventually get married. However, their relationship ultimately ended without a wedding. When questioned by investigators, Kyle shared the story of his time with Mindy. He recounts the story of how they first met and the intense attraction they feel from the very first moment. Kyle described their 2.5-year relationship as having ups and downs. Kyle and Mindy began arguing frequently. After completing his university studies, Kyle needed to move forward with his life, so he relocated to a new area about an hour's drive from Valley City. This move concerned Mindy, who feared Kyle might find someone else, as maintaining a long-distance relationship can be tough. According to Kyle, he chose to end the relationship due to these challenges. Following the breakup, Mindy made efforts to reconcile with Kyle, but he said he'd have started seeing another girl and subsequently ceased communication with Mindy. However, about 7 months before Mindy passed away, she went to Kyle's house to talk to him. Kyle insisted he had nothing to discuss and asked her to leave. The conversation ended, and Mindy becoming upset and departing, marking the last time they spoke to each other. Kyle's demeanor changed a few days after Mindy's death, as he sat in the interrogation room. He expressed regret over his actions and revealed that Mindy had been in contact with his father, Rodney Kia, which he found unusual. According to Mindy's friends, Rodney would call her multiple times a day, sometimes scaling back to just a few calls a week. Kyle believed his father had become overly attached to Mindy. At one point, Kyle asked his father to cease communication with Mindy. He also mentioned that his mother discovered the frequent calls and was upset, telling Rodney it was wrong given. Despite this, the Kyle family had a genuine affection for Mindy, and her communication with Rodney may have been a way for her to maintain a connection with Kyle. The police investigated Mindy's voicemail and discovered a message from Rodney, left after her death, in which he was crying and apologizing for what had happened. This close relationship between Rodney and Mindy raised suspicions, and the police called him in for questioning. The police asked Rodney about his attachment to Mindy, his son's 22-year-old ex-girlfriend. Rodney acknowledged it was unusual, but explained that he grew fond of Mindy when she was dating his son, Kyle. He liked Mindy because she reminded him of his wife when his wife was young. Initially, they discussed Kyle, but soon their conversations and texts expanded to other topics, and even after his wife discovered their conversation, this continued. Rodney stated that he and Mindy spoke frequently, sometimes up to 20 times a week, with Mindy usually initiating the calls. He described their relationship as paternal, considering her like a daughter, and was shocked by her death. He left a voicemail message for investigators, wanting to talk to Mindy one last time. However, these emotional messages only increased suspicions about Rodney's intentions. Although investigators doubted a romantic relationship between Mindy and Rodney, they considered the possibility that he had become dangerously obsessed with her. Rodney gave his DNA to the police and told them he was working on his farm with his two sons from 7:30 a.m. until evening on the day in question. His family backed up his story, so the investigators let him go. The police then sent Rodney's DNA to a lab to compare it with skin particles found under the victim, Mindy's, fingernails. As the police continued their search for Mindy's killer, people in Valley City grew increasingly worried about their safety. Many people were too afraid to leave their homes because the person who killed Mindy was still at large. 6 days after Mindy's passing, her funeral was held. Due to the large number of people wanting to pay their respects, the service took place in the school gym instead of the church. Undercover police officers attended, keeping a discreet watch on the crowd for any suspicious behavior, as it was suspected that Mindy's killer might be in attendance there. The police had also asked attendees to take photos and videos of the crowd, hoping to capture any unusual behavior. However, this effort did not produce any leads. With no new suspects, the police were left waiting for the results of DNA tests from existing suspects. However, investigators uncovered a significant lead. Upon analyzing the DNA found under Mindy's fingernails and entering it into the federal database, they discovered a match from a 2-year-old case in Fargo, North Dakota, approximately 75 miles from Valley City. In this prior case, the attacker forced her to have sex with him. The DNA match revealed that the same person was responsible for both Mindy's murder and in the attack in Fargo. These things indicated that the individual was likely to continue committing crimes. The police were now under pressure to apprehend the suspect before another victim was harmed. Although they still didn't know the perpetrator's name, the relevance to an Fargo case provided a crucial lead in the investigation of Mindy's death. The police investigating Mindy's case met with a 22-year-old woman from Fargo who had been attacked in a previous case. The woman had planned to become a teacher and had been out with friends at a bar, drinking and having fun, on the evening of the attack. She told her friends she needed to use the bathroom, but her memories stopped there. When she regained consciousness, she found herself pinned to a mattress in an unfamiliar apartment, with a man she didn't know on top of her. He covered her mouth to prevent her from screaming, and she tried to resist. Surprisingly, the man eventually let her go. She was barefoot and disheveled, with her purse missing. She reported the incident to the police and described her attacker as a muscular African-American man, over 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. Although the police couldn't find the attacker at the time, they had his DNA, which they entered into the federal database, but the case remained unsolved for 2 years. It was later discovered that the same man had committed another attack, this time resulting in death. In the investigation of Mindy's case, the police collected multiple DNA samples and sent them to the lab for analysis. After conducting more in-depth analysis, the lab experts found a match. The DNA belonged to one of the individuals who had voluntarily provided a sample DNA. Surprisingly, the match was not Mindy's ex-boyfriend Kyle or his father Rodney, who had initially raised suspicion. Instead, the DNA from the skin found under Mindy's fingernails belonged to 34-year-old Mo Gibbs. He worked as a corrections officer at the Barnes County Jail. O had undergone a big transformation in his past, having moved from being a member of the Crips gang in Central California to serving in the U.S. Navy. He had been married with children but got divorced and later relocated to Valley City. Before becoming a corrections officer, Mo worked as a college guard. Mo had been working at the Barnes County Jail and was known to the investigators handling Mindy's case. As he appeared to be a decent individual, it came as a shock when his DNA was found under Mindy's fingernails. The investigators devised a plan to bring Gibbs in for questioning without arousing his suspicion. They contacted him, stating they needed to ask a few more questions, all while keeping him under discreet surveillance in case he attempted to flee. Mo arrived at the police station on time, unaware of the true purpose of the interrogation. Before revealing the DNA evidence, the police offered Mo the opportunity to take a polygraph test. He agreed and responded to all the questions, but there are some indications that he is lying. Despite this, Mo maintained his innocence in Mindy's death. When informed about the DNA match, Mo remained surprisingly calm, continuing to deny any involvement in Mindy's murder. However, when told that his DNA also linked him to a case in Fargo, his demeanor changed, and he smiled, but said nothing. The collected was enough to arrest Mo Gibbs. He was handcuffed and charged with the murder of Mindy Morgenstern, followed by charges related to the Fargo case. After his arrest became public, 5 female prisoners came forward, alleging that Mo had coerced them into sexual relations while he was on duty. As a result, Mo faced 6 additional charges. It may seem unusual that someone with a prison record was hired as a college guard and later as a corrections officer at Barnes County Jail. However, Mo Gibbs' employers were unaware of his true identity. He had changed his name from Glendale Morgan Jr. to Mo Gibbs before applying to these positions. When he was in the Navy, Mo was involved in a drive-by shooting and subsequently spent over 5 years in prison. During his trial, Mo's lawyers proposed a theory to explain how his DNA came to be under the victim's fingernails, Mindy. They suggested that she may have touched the same door handle as Mo, thus transferring the DNA. The defense further implied that Mindy's boyfriend, Jordan, could have been the one responsible for harming her. Mo pleaded guilty to charges, except those directly related to Mindy's death. Notably, neither his fingerprints nor DNA were found on the knife that caused Mindy's injuries. Prosecutors attributed this lack of evidence to the use of a cleaning agent, which they believed he had eradicated all traces. The prosecution's theory was that Mo had entered Mindy's apartment immediately after she, with the intention of coercing her into intimacy. When she resisted, he lost his temper, murdered her. In an attempt to eliminate any evidence, he then doused the area with a cleaning agent. Mo maintained that if he had been the one responsible for Mindy's death, he would not have willingly provided a DNA sample. On July 12, 2007, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous decision, resulting in the trial being postponed by 4 months. During the retrial, prosecutors were better prepared and show DNA experts to counter-challenge the defense's argument. The defense claimed that Mo's DNA was found under Mindy's fingernails due to accidental contact with a door handle. However, the experts testified that the amount of DNA found could only have resulted from intense physical contact. Additionally, Mo's cellmate testified that he had confessed to the crime and had even expressed a desire to commit the same crime again if given the opportunity. After deliberating for 27 hours, the jury delivered a guilty verdict on November 20, 2007. When given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, Mo Gibbs, 35, maintained his innocence and expressed sympathy for Mindy's family. He sent his condolences, as well as prayers, to Mindy's family. He added that it was horrible, and it should never have happened, and he was sorry that it had happened. The judge found the evidence against Gibbs to be overwhelming, showing that he had strangled and stabbed Mindy, then poured the detergent over her face and body. The judge also denied Mo's request for a new trial. Mo Gibbs received a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Mindy Morgenstern. He was also given a 12-year sentence for assaulting a woman in Fargo and an additional 15 years for other charges. Mo Gibbs is currently serving his sentence at the North Dakota State Penitentiary in Bismarck. After the sentencing, Mindy's mother, Eunice, addressed Mo that she forgive his, but she won't forget what you did to Mindy.